Chapter 1303. Chen Zhao nodded as a greeting to Simpson. He came to Duba's side and squatted down to check his injuries. Duba's injuries were quite serious, but they could be treated quickly. Is it Ruby? Chen Zhao tilted his head to look at Ruby, who was sitting nearby. Ruby kept her head down and didn't look at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't know if she was blaming herself or ignoring Duba's injuries. Duba, bear with the pain. Ah! As soon as Chen Zhao finished, Duba let out a pained cry, accompanied by the sound of bones dislocating and colliding. Chen Zhao moved the dislocated bone back. Next time you fight, you can't touch this part unless you want to go to jail. Chen Zhao pointed at an inch below Duba's right ribs. Attack here. This is the liver and it has the least fat. It can cause serious injuries. Chen Zhao explained as he spoke. Also, don't use your elbows when fighting. The skin and fat on the elbows are the least. It's like a blunt weapon and can easily cause serious injuries or even death. If you don't have irreconcilable grudges, don't fight like this. Don't hit the heart either. It can easily cause cardiac arrest and death, Chen Zhao said. Simpson was speechless at Chen Zhao's teaching them how to fight. However, he also felt that it made sense. At least they would consider not causing serious injuries when they fought next time. Chen Zhao said all this because he was friends with them. However, they didn't have a deep friendship. So, Chen Zhao wasn't in the position to stop them from fighting. Okay, Duba, Chen Zhao said. You need to rest for 3 days. Don't do any intense exercise for 3 days. Chen, thank you. How much? Forget it this time. Last time, Ruby and Kohler went to give a lesson to the players of my school's basketball club. Let's just treat this consultation fee as compensation. Chen Zhao packed his tools. Duba, this medicine is for internal consumption. Soak it in water every day. Duba propped himself up. His abdomen still hurt a bit, but it wasn't as painful as before. Duba, how are you? Simpson asked. I feel much better. It doesn't hurt as much anymore, Duba said. Chen, come be our HR team's doctor. Simpson looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao smiled. How much can you give me? The team doctor needed to be with the HR team every time they competed. A few dozen matches in a season. According to Chen Zhao's current medical fees, the HR team would have to pay Chen Zhao millions of dollars. As for the HR team's current team doctor, his annual salary didn't exceed $100,000. The cost of the entire team of doctors would not exceed $300,000. Don't even think about it. I'll only show you once or twice at most. It's impossible for me to follow the team. Chen Zhao packed up his toolbox and got up to leave. Simpson walked Chen Zhao to the door. Chen Zhao was only friends with them, so he didn't plan to mediate their conflict. He wasn't in the position to do so either. The next day, an uninvited guest came to Chen Zhao's house. Dell brought Faith over, and Faith started playing with Jerlin as soon as she arrived. Chen, Dell said, Master said that my magic has improved. He wants you to choose a suitable spell for me. What kind of spell do you want to learn? How's your Chingy Cloud? Dell shook his head. I've learned Chingy Cloud, but it's too weak. Chen Zhao thought about it. The incantation for Chingy Cloud wasn't difficult. It was a basic spell of the Chingy sect, but Chingy Cloud's effects depended on the strength of the cultivator's magic. When Chen Zhao had learned Chingy Cloud, he couldn't even block bullets. It was like covering his skin with a layer of rubber. And with Dell's current mana, he probably didn't even have 40 mana. He probably wouldn't even be able to cover his entire body with Green Robe's cloud. Master said that the Chingy sect has many different spells. I'm suitable for a lightning spell. Lightning spell? Chen Zhao hadn't come across such spells before. Li Qing had let Chen Zhao take care of the Chingy sect's records, not only because of their friendship, but also because Chen Zhao had the ability to protect them. If they were handed over to Dell for safekeeping, he wouldn't have the ability to protect them once Dell exposed the books in his hands, and people with ill intentions coveted them. Chen Zhao took out the Chingy sex records and let Dell flip through them. Look at it yourself. Tell me which one you like. Li Qing wanted Chen Zhao to teach Dell. If Dell learned it himself, he probably wouldn't be able to learn it in a long time. Dell flipped through the books and found a book called Dragonfly Skimming the Water. Chen Zhao hadn't learned this spell before, but it didn't mean he couldn't learn it now. The spell was really useless to Chen Zhao right now. It was really useless. To put it simply, it was just a Qigong spell. Chen Zhao could already fly in the air now. Why would he need Qigong? But to Dell it was very suitable. Chen Zhao read it a few times and memorized the incantation. After going through it in his head, he'd more or less learned it. It was like a university professor reading a primary school textbook, even if he hadn't read it before. But with a university professor's comprehension, it was impossible for him not to understand the contents of a primary school textbook. But to Chen Zhao, Dell was a primary school student. No, a kindergarten student. I'll demonstrate. Watch. Dell put down the book at once and looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao walked to the lakeside and used the incantation. He leaped 4 or 5 meters into the air, spread his arms, and glided forward for more than 20 meters. Dell's eyes glowed. To him, this action was too graceful, like something out of a movie. Chen Zhao tapped on the surface of the water again. Then he leaped and glided for another 20 meters. After circling the lake, Chen Zhao returned to Dell. Do you want to try? The key is the water, but with your current magic, it's probably too difficult. You can try on land first. No, I want water. Dell looked at Chen Zhao stubbornly. All right, you can give it a try. Dell took a few steps back, then sprinted towards the lake. But the moment his toes touched the surface of the lake, his whole body sank into the water. Wow! Dell spat out some water. Why didn't it light up? I don't believe it. Let me try again. Dad, you're so dumb. Faith saw Dell's actions. I learned it all. Chapter 1304. Dell's eyes widened. Chen Zhao also looked at Faith in surprise. However, Fisher fell into the water after using it once and couldn't sustain the mana consumption for a second time. Little Jerlin watched from the side. She tilted her head in confusion. Chen Zhao had to admit that Faith's talent surprised him. After all, Faith didn't even know the incantation. Just from Chen Zhao's demonstration, she could use 70% of it. Chen Zhao looked at Faith and then at Dell. Dell's face was bright red. He climbed out of the water with his wet clothes. Faith was almost 2 years old. She was much taller than little Jerlin. Logically speaking, the 2 requirements to become a spiritualist were either the tribulation of life and death or a natural bloodline. But Faith was neither. She didn't have a natural bloodline or a tribulation of life and death, but she just had magic. Chen Zhao suspected that he'd used the pristine eyeball to replace Faith's original eyes, and the pristine eyeball had mutated, giving Faith magic. But normal people could only gain vision with the pristine eyeball. Only a special bloodline could make the pristine eyeball mutate. This meant that Faith probably had a special bloodline. It hadn't been awakened yet, but the pristine eyeball had still changed in her. But Faith was still too young. Her magic was very weak. Dell and Faith stayed until the night. They didn't leave until after dinner. As for the dragonfly's touch on the water, Dell couldn't learn it no matter what. Faith, how did you learn the pristine eyeball? Dell asked as he drove. I can see the magic flowing in Uncle Chen's body. Faith, who was sitting in the passenger seat, replied. You can see it. Yes, Faith said, pointing at her eyes. Dell remembered that Faith had been born blind, but she'd recovered her vision because of Chen Zhao's treatment. Was it because of Chen Zhao's treatment that Faith's vision could see more than normal people? Then you can see Dad's magic too, right? Yes, I can. The magic in Dad's body is like a little earthworm. What about your Uncle Chen? Faith can't see everything. She can only see Uncle when he uses magic. But Uncle is definitely stronger than you, because when he uses magic, he has several times more magic than you do. It's like there's a snake the size of Raymond flowing through your body. Dell pouted. Okay, your Uncle Chen is the best, okay? Where's your own magic, Faith? My mana is also a little earthworm, Faith said with a pout. Chan Zhao, on the other hand, started looking through Qingyi Sek's books at home. He wanted to see if there were any spells that were suitable for him and that he had missed out on. Starting from Shangliu Qingyi, the green robe sect had been passed down for 1,000 years. After dozens of generations, it didn't just leave behind Shangliu Qingyi's techniques. There were also many techniques left behind by the later sages. Many of these techniques were similar. Most of them were useless to him, at least not in actual combat. There was another important reason why Chen Zhao had accepted Li Qing's request to look after the Qingyi Sect's records. Many of the Qingyi Sect's spells could be used in medicine. This was also the type that Chen Zhao was most interested in. Some of the Qingyi Sect's spells were also very similar to Chen Zhao's own abilities. For example, the advanced version of needle thread, Countless Threads, could turn the thin strands of magic into thousands of strands and spread them out. They could restrain or kill the enemy directly. However, this spell was similar to dark lava. The difference was that dark lava could be seen, while Countless Threads was made of magic and couldn't be seen. Countless Threads wasn't completely useless. For example, it could control certain things, such as sword writing. The effect was similar to rhythmic sword writing. It could be said to be a weaker version of it. Rhythmic sword writing could allow the weapons Qin Zhao controlled to have close to his own speed and attack power. However, the weapons controlled by Countless Threads weren't as powerful. After all, weapons controlled by magic strands couldn't have tens or even hundreds of tons of destructive power when swung. Chen Zhao suddenly felt that Countless Threads wasn't so useless. At least it was very good at group attacks. Chen Zhao felt that Countless Threads' control of weapons far exceeded rhythmic sword writing. If he controlled 1,000 swords and released them at the same time, he could indeed have a group attack effect. Moreover, what Chen Zhao lacked the most was group attacks. Chen Zhao entered the river map to find Old Turtle. Old Turtle, help me get 1,000 stone swords. Your rhythmic sword writing can control 1,000 stone swords. It's not rhythmic sword writing. I thought of another move. Chen Zhao told Old Turtle his idea. But this way, the power of a single sword will be far weaker than rhythmic sword writing. I know. This move isn't for a single powerful enemy. It's for a large number of enemies. Okay, Old Turtle made 1,000 stone swords for Chen Zhao. For Old Turtle, it was a piece of cake. Soon, 1,000 stone swords were placed before Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao started using Countless Threads. Magic strands wrapped around the swords and lifted them. But some swords were lifted and some fell. It was too difficult to lift 1,000 stone swords neatly, let alone control them to attack the enemy. Chen Zhao tried again. It was the same situation. Chen Zhao's control was far from being able to control 1,000 stone swords at the same time. After dozens of attempts, Chen Zhao finally lifted 1,000 stone swords at the same time, but the effect wasn't good. The 1,000 stone swords collided with each other. Before they even attacked, they started fighting each other. Old Turtle looked at Chen Zhao with interest. He didn't give any advice. To Old Turtle, Chen Zhao was like a kid in kindergarten. Chen Zhao wasn't discouraged. He just had this idea. For Chen Zhao, he couldn't use any spell or spell right away. It was just a concept, an immature concept. A spell that matched one's abilities had to be tried dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of times. He was constantly improving, and at the same time he was constantly in the process of familiarizing himself with it. Chen Zhao didn't expect to succeed in a few tries. Chen Zhao planned to get used to lifting 1,000 stone swords with Countless Threads first. The rest would come later. Lift, put down, Chen Zhao kept practicing these two movements. If 10 wasn't enough, he would do 100. If 100 wasn't enough, he would do 1,000. If 1,000 wasn't enough, he would do 10,000. Chapter 1305. Compared to the demon god canon or spell, return to one. Connections was much more difficult than the first two. Of course, this spell couldn't be called innumerable threads. It should be regarded as an advanced version of innumerable threads. Chen Zhao hadn't thought of a name yet. He would only consider giving it a new name after he completed it. He hadn't succeeded yet. It was just a prototype. To lift 1,000 stone swords at the same time, Chen Zhao tried 50 times. Then he tried 500 times to make 1,000 stone swords float in the air at the same time without interfering with each other. Then he had to control 1,000 stone swords to attack. However, it was even more difficult to control 1,000 stone swords to attack. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, it was too difficult. Every time the 1,000 stone swords moved, they would collide and interfere with each other. Chen Zhao, why don't you reduce the number of stone swords? It'll be much easier. That's boring, Chen Zhao said. If I reduce the number of swords, my ideal group attack effect will be greatly reduced. If it couldn't achieve the group attack effect Chen Zhao wanted, the spell would be useless. Old Turtle didn't try to persuade him anymore. Chen Zhao continued practicing the new spell. Again. He repeated the same process again and again. In the next few days, Chen Zhao went in and out of the river map. Every time, he would stay in the river map for more than 10 days. This was the spell that Chen Zhao practiced the most. Chen Zhao didn't know how many times he'd practiced it, but he still hadn't succeeded. He still couldn't make all the stone swords point in the same direction. To achieve his goal, he needed the stone swords to attack more widely and move more complicated. Chen, I think we should consider the feng shui of our new home. Fei Lai looked at Chen Zhao seriously. Darling, the project is almost finished. It's not suitable to change it. Chen Zhao said perfunctorily. No need. We just need to make some adjustments. For example, our original plan was to plant a row of palm trees. Now, we'll plant 2 rows of crepe myrtle. What crepe myrtle? Chen Zhao was confused. As a Chinese, you don't know about crepe myrtle. Chen Zhao was helpless. He wasn't a botanist. Chen Zhao only knew about the ziwei from Return of the Pearl. He didn't know about such a plant. Crepe myrtle is also known as purple gold flower and purple orchid. In China, crepe myrtle is also known as mantang red. It is an extremely expensive flower, meaning that wealth and honor fill the house. In feng shui shua, crepe myrtle is also known as family court crepe myrtle, which means wealth and honor fill the house. All right, you decide. In terms of feng shui, Chen Zhao really couldn't win against Fei Lai. Originally, we planned to plant redwood trees on both sides of the road leading to the villa. Now, we'll change it to a grassland and plant an oak tree on the left. It's best if it's an adult oak tree, at least 100 years old. So, it's best to find a 100-year-old oak tree now and transplant it to our new home. What's the meaning of the oak tree? In America, the oak tree is the national tree. In the East, it's also a symbol of good luck. In ancient times, the oak tree was the main beam of a palace. It has to be more than 100 years old to bear the main beam of a palace. The wood is sturdy and heavy. The big ones can be the main beam, while the small ones can be the firewood. The beam bears the weight of the world and bears the weight of the world. The firewood burns the light and illuminates the air. The oak tree is majestic and bears the burden of a pillar. Chen Zhao was stunned by Fei Lai's words. He knew that Fei Lai's Chinese had improved by leaps and bounds during this time. However, he didn't expect Fei Lai's Chinese to have reached this level. Anyway, Chen Zhao was speechless from her words. Then I'll go and see if there's a suitable oak tree to transplant. There were quite a few oak trees in the forest around Mirror Lake, but they weren't old. The oldest was probably only 20 years old. Plant a few more pomegranate trees. Pomegranate trees have the meaning of having more children and blessings in both the East and West. Okay, I'll do as you say. In a classroom at the University of Los Angeles, the lecturer was lecturing non-stop on the podium. At this moment, a soldier in military uniform came to the classroom and knocked on the door. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt your class, but we need 2 students to cooperate with us." "Soldier, this is a university. Are you going to arrest my students?" The lecturer asked with a frown. "No, I'm not arresting you. In America, soldiers didn't have the right to arrest people." The officer held 2 photos in his hands. "Ms. Lee, Ms. Westana, can you come with me?" Lee Moo and Westana glanced at each other, surprised. They vaguely remembered this officer. They seemed to have seen him before. It was in Alaska's Toda Snowy Mountains. When the military had been in control, the 2 had been left in that area. Just then, the lecturer said, "Lee Westana, you have the right to refuse." The 2 stood up. Lee Moo said, "Sir, we're fine. We know this colonel." Lee Moo and Westana walked out of the classroom. Lee Moo asked, "Colonel, we meet again. How can I help you?" "Ms. Lee, Ms. Westana, since we've met before, I won't beat around the bush. The military needs 2 professionals to join our team." "You mean you want us to join the army?" The 2 were surprised. They were obviously not qualified soldiers. They really didn't understand why the colonel wanted them. "Not to join the army, but to be a military doctor," the colonel said. "We're still students." "Yes, I know, but I think you can be trusted. After you left last time, you didn't leak any military secrets." In fact, after the 2 were allowed to leave, the military had been closely monitoring their movements to make sure they didn't leak any military secrets. Did we come across any military secrets last time? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, your performance is trustworthy. That's why I'm looking for you again, the colonel said. Then what can we get? Freedom. You won't be restricted by your studies. At the same time, I can guarantee that you'll get a degree. Also, you'll receive great benefits while you're enlisted. Of course, we'll also guarantee your safety. Will this mission be dangerous? There's a certain degree of danger. Of course, your mission isn't to take risks, but to treat injured soldiers. Lee Moo and Westana's eyes lit up. They were both very active and adventurous girls. Are we going to the battlefield? Lee Moo asked. No, it's in Alaska's Toda Snowy Mountains, the border with the United States, the colonel said. Chapter 1306. It was Lee Moo and Westana's first time taking a military plane. On this military transport plane, there were more than a dozen fully armed soldiers. Of course, they were not there to guard Lee Moo and Westana. Instead, they were sent to the Toda Snow Mountain just like them. Hi, 2 beautiful ladies, may I know your names? A soldier started a conversation, and the atmosphere in the cabin quickly became lively. I'm Matthew from Howard Air Force Base in Southern California. I'm Sauter from the Pacific Fleet. Lee Moo and Westana realized that the soldiers were not from the same place, but from different military units. At that moment, Colonel Mansari, who invited Lee Moo and Westana, came out of the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, you'd better put on your coats. We're approaching Canadian airspace. Hearing that, everyone put on their coats. Soon, they felt the cold air enter the cabin. Fortunately, the plane began to descend soon after. The military plane landed at an unfamiliar military airport. This place was covered in white snow, and the surroundings were all snowy. There was no greenery in sight. Is this the Toda Snow Mountain? Lee Moo asked. Not yet. We're about 130 kilometers away from the Toda Snow Mountain, Colonel Mansari said. Soon, Colonel Mansari found a few military SUVs, and everyone boarded them. After a bumpy ride, they finally arrived at a small town at the foot of the Toda Snow Mountain. Lee Moo and Westana had been here before. The Toda Snow Mountain was originally a ski resort, but now there was not a single person in sight. Even the town was empty. Li Mu and West Anna looked at each other, surprised by the change in the place. The last time they came here, there were still many residents in the town. Why was there not a single person now? The car arrived at another base. Li Mu and West Anna had been to this base before. They had been locked up here for a month. There were not many people in this base, and a few soldiers were familiar with them. After all, they had stayed here for a month. But after more than 3 months, looking at these soldiers now, they were a little dispirited. They did not have a good time here. Mansari assigned the new soldiers to their respective rooms, then said to Li Mu and West Anna, "You will be here for 3 months, and these 3 months will be very boring." "Mr. Colonel, you've said it before, and we're already mentally prepared." "All right. Your job is mainly to treat injured or sick patients," Mansari said. "Also, no one lives within a radius of 300 kilometers, so try not to go out, especially at night." "Do not go out, got it?" "Of course. I remember that there were quite a few residents in this town. Where are they now?" "It has been relocated," Mansari said. "Also, according to the weather report, there will be a snowstorm here tonight. I hope you won't catch a cold. In addition, no matter what you see or hear in the future, it will be a military secret and must not be leaked." Before the 2 women came, they had been warned many times not to leak anything they saw or heard. Just as Mansari said, at night, the wind began to howl outside. Li Mu was sleeping soundly when suddenly there was a commotion outside. Li Mu rubbed her eyes and got up. She saw light outside the window. It was a machine gun. Soldiers were fighting outside. However, because the wind and snow outside were too heavy, Li Mu couldn't see who they were fighting with. He could only see the soldiers outside firing at the snowstorm. Li Mu was shocked. The battle outside lasted for more than half an hour. Suddenly, there was a hurried knock on the door. At the same time, Mansari's voice came. Miss Li opened the door. Li Mu hesitated for a moment, but still opened the door. "Colonel, what's the matter? You and Vestana's work has begun. There are soldiers who need your treatment." "Okay, please wait a moment." Li Mu quickly put on her coat and followed Mansari to the infirmary. This was not Li Mu's first time in the infirmary. Back when she and Vestana were detained here, she had also treated the soldiers here. Vestana had already arrived. When Li Mu came in, she saw Vestana treating a soldier. The soldier's shoulder seemed to be bitten by something, and the injury was very serious. "Li, help me get some tranquilizers and painkillers," Vestana said anxiously. Li Mu and Vestana began to give the soldier first aid. Although the infirmary was not big, it was equipped with all kinds of equipment. The two's academic performance was relatively average, but their practical ability was good. The first aid lasted for half an hour. Finally, Li Mu stitched up the wound. Li Mu and Vestana's bodies and faces were covered in blood. Just as the two were catching their breath, another soldier was pushed in. This soldier's thigh was injured. It also looked like he was bitten by something. Because the wound touched the main artery, the injury was very serious. For a moment, the 2 women were in a panic. The patient's body temperature is abnormal. Why is it so high? Is it inflammation? No, it can't be so fast. Anti-inflammatory medicine. No, we have to cool him down as soon as possible. Use physical cooling. I'll go get some snow outside, Vestana said. As soon as Vestana left the infirmary, she was stopped by Mansari. "Where are you going?" "I need some snow to cool down the patient." "Don't go. Go back inside." "But I'll get it for you," Mansari said. Vestana saw Mansari loading his gun as he walked out. It did not look like he was going out, but more like he was going to the battlefield. After a few minutes, Mansari came back with a bucket of ice and snow. Vestana and Li Mu saw that when Mansari put his gun on the table, there was smoke on it. He seemed to have used it just now. After the 2 women's rescue, the soldier was out of danger. Then Mansari handed the 2 women a gun each. "What are you doing?" Chapter 1307. The two women were shocked by Mansari's words. "We're students and doctors here, not killers," Vestana said angrily. "So, if you can't do it, you can inform us," Mansari said. "Why?" Mansari did not say anything in the face of the two women's interrogation. "Since we're already here, can't you just tell us the truth? You called us here because you trust us, right?" "It's not because I trust you," Mansari said calmly. "It's because you're easier to control." The two women were obviously displeased by his words. "I hope you can come and leave safely within 3 months. Maybe we will evacuate in less than 3 months. Before that, you'd better stay in this base and don't leave. 3 months later, I'll ask the military to change your files and information, and you'll get a generous bonus. If anything happens to you, all your records will disappear, and your corpses may not even return to your family. So please remember my advice and don't leave the headquarters. There's also the first aid rule. If your body temperature exceeds 42 degrees Celsius and it doesn't drop in 15 minutes, shoot the wounded. What if it's you? Same." The sound of gunfire outside continued until dawn before it stopped. Vestana and Limu dragged their weary bodies and laid down on the bed again. At noon, they were woken up by the roar outside. It wasn't the sound of fighting, but trucks. A large number of supplies and ammunition were being transported to the base. The base felt like a fortress. 10 new soldiers arrived at the same time. "Lee, don't you think it's strange here? Are you talking about the 2 injured soldiers?" Limu looked at Vestana. "They were both bitten. The wounds are very deep. The creature that bit them has incredible strength, and their wounds will quickly cause their bodies to heat up. Usually, if the wound was infected and caused inflammation, the disease would only take place after 12 hours. However, the soldier who was injured last night showed symptoms of high temperature in just 10 minutes. His body temperature was over 40 degrees. This kind of temperature was very scary. It was hard to reach such a high temperature for normal diseases. What puzzled them the most was Colonel Mansari's request. If the patient's body temperature reached 42 degrees Celsius and did not cool down within 15 minutes, they would shoot the patient. The knowledge they had learned in school had never taught them this rule. This was absolutely contrary to their medical knowledge and morals. "Tell me, what kind of creature could cause such a wound?" "There should be North American gray wolves and brown bears living nearby." "Brown bears don't live in packs. Only North American gray wolves live in packs." The intense gunfight last night could only have been a battle with a pack species. A single individual couldn't have caused such a serious exchange of fire. Limu said it could have been a large wolf pack. "A large wolf pack? How big do you think it is?" "In the world, North America has the largest number of wolves. However, the largest population was found in the grasslands of Inner Mongolia in Asia in 1976. A population of 180 wolves was found." "Is there really such a large wolf pack?" Vestana asked in surprise. However, in modern society, it is impossible for a wolf pack to reach such a scale. This has to do with their range of activities. They have their own territory, and the amount of food in their territory determines the size of their pack. If there is a large herd of deer in their territory, then the number of wolves will increase and vice versa. Asian wolves mainly live in grasslands or deserts, and the number of wolf packs on the grasslands is also the largest. This is because the number of bison, sheep, and wild horses on the grasslands is large enough to support their food needs. However, it is very difficult to find such a super wolf pack in recent times. In historical records, there were once a super wolf pack with thousands of wolves. Then, do you think there are wolves outside the base? Maybe. That's the most likely possibility, Limu said. But if it's a wolf pack, it shouldn't be a secret, right? How would I know? Hello, Mr. West. Hi, I'm Asalisa. West didn't expect Asalisa to take the initiative to contact him, but judging from Asalisa's tone, it didn't seem like she was informing him. Instead, it seemed like she was communicating with him on official business. Hello, Ms. Asalisa. What can I do for you? West asked calmly. It's like this. Mr. Leon contacted me and asked me to contact the supernatural organization. He hopes you can cooperate with the military. Military? We don't participate in military operations. West frowned. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up now. West hung up. 10 minutes later, West's phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number. West picked it up. Hello, I'm Asalisa. What is it? West didn't waste time and went straight to the point. Leon should be retiring soon, Asalisa said. What does this have to do with what you just said to me? I don't know the specifics of this operation, but I know that Leon's successor is from the military. Leon wants to retire peacefully, so he's bringing the organization and the military together. West thought about it. Then, what's the successor's attitude toward the supernatural organization? The successor is still in the military. He doesn't know about the supernatural organization at all, Asalisa said. Asalisa said, so my suggestion is to take the initiative and let the new head of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department know about the existence of the supernatural organization and the value of its existence. Also, after Leon retires, I should leave the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Does this matter to you? West asked. On the other end of the phone, Asalisa hesitated for a moment and said, This is related to whether or not I will be punished because of Leon. If Leon can retire safely, I can too. If he is punished, I'm afraid I will also. Chapter 1308. That was why Asalisa had joined the supernatural organization. Leon was the head of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Asalisa had been his assistant for 5 years. It could be said that she knew all the secrets that Leon knew. So, her situation wasn't much better than Liang's. This kind of political struggle was the cruelest. Liang's enemies would also include Asalisa in the scope of their revenge. West's heart was heavy as well. The Anti-Terrorism Security Department was the superior department of the supernatural organization in name and also the source of funding. Many of the supernatural organization's actions also needed the support of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. He didn't have a good relationship with Leon, but Leon also knew the supernatural organization's importance. So, Leon wouldn't purposely make things difficult for the supernatural organization. At least after the last conflict, the supernatural organization and the Anti-Terrorism Security Department had always minded their own business. Now that Leon had retired, an unknown head had taken over. What would happen to the relationship between the two? West immediately contacted Chen Zhao. President Leon is going to retire from the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Oh, it's best if that old asterisk shall scram. Chen Zhao still hadn't realized the severity of the problem. Leon might be asshole, but at least he knows the value of our organization. If a new person takes over, our days won't be so good. Do you have a way to make Leon stay? Chen Zhao asked. No, I can't interfere with a change in position like this. That's why I said, since we can't intervene, there's no need to worry about it. That old bastard is so old, and sooner or later, he will be like this. As for the new minister, we can't control his attitude, so we should prepare for the worst first. If the new head is determined to get rid of us, we'll find our own way, our own sponsors, or our own livelihood. We won't starve to death anyway. Chen Zhao actually knew that it would be harmful if the organization became a private organization. Once it became a private force, the other party might make many requests that they couldn't refuse, or even kill people. This was completely different from the original purpose of the supernatural organization's existence. Even idling around was better than being an assassin. The supernatural organization was there to solve supernatural incidents, not to become a dagger in someone's hand. President, it's not like there's no chance at all. It's said that the new director of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department is a member of the military, and he's currently dealing with a special case. Leon wants us to take the initiative to contact the new director and show him our value. I believe that when the time comes, the new director will not make things difficult for us after seeing our ability. Chen Zhao thought for a moment. Although this was a little like flattering the new leader, Chen Zhao still felt that it was a good idea. However, it wasn't impossible to reduce some trouble for this. Sure, Chen Zhao said. You'll be in charge this time. Contact them and express our goodwill and abilities. If the new minister is willing, we'll help him solve his problem. Mansari answered the phone with a frown on his face. Are you saying that the Anti-Terrorism Security Department's subordinate department is willing to help solve the problem here? Yes, Colonel Mansari. They also want to use this opportunity to show off their abilities, Leon said. Mansari knew that he would soon be heading to the Counter-Terrorism Security Department. However, he still knew nothing about it. He only knew that it was a department that mainly dealt with terrorists. But for now, he still didn't know some secrets of the department. He would only know after he was appointed. Mansari frowned. He could more or less understand the other party's intentions. He just wanted to show his value in front of the new leader. However, Mansari was very disdainful of such things. Would a capable department need to do something like this to please their superiors? What's this department called? Supernatural Organization. They specialize in dealing with unconventional incidents, Leon said. Mansari's frown deepened. What kind of messy organization is this? Are they a bunch of charlatans? Colonel Mansari, don't forget that the incident you're facing right now is a supernatural incident. Isn't that? Mansari paused. His tone suddenly turned cold. Do you know what I'm dealing with right now? Colonel Mansari, don't forget that I'm still the director of the Counterterrorism Security Department. As far as I know, this incident here is a secret organization conducting human experiments. Then it went out of control and caused the test subjects to riot. Colonel Mansari, it seems like you don't know much. Leon's tone was somewhat disdainful. Toda Snow Mountain has always been a dangerous area. Similar incidents have happened in the past few decades. There have been many records of lockdowns, but the situation in the past 2 years has been more serious. It's not a lab that went out of control. It's a pure supernatural incident. The Counterterrorism Security Department has long recorded it. So, the supernatural organization has the ability to deal with this incident. Whether they have the ability or not, why don't you meet them first? If you feel that they don't have the ability, just reject them. It won't do you any harm anyway. I don't have time. You can ask them to send someone to talk to you. Sure, ask them to be experienced. Leon hung up and pouted. This person from the military really didn't know how to interact with others. His tone was so harsh. It was really uncomfortable. After Mansari hung up the phone with Leong, he picked up the phone and dialed another number. He realized that he'd been kept in the dark. He'd been dealing with this incident for so long, but he didn't know the truth at all. He didn't even know as much as an outsider. This made Mansari very unhappy. Through his contacts in the military, Mansari found some inside information. Just as Leon said, the incident at Toda Snow Mountain last November wasn't the first time. In fact, in the past 50 years, Toda Snow Mountain had been locked down 9 times. Each time, they used avalanches as an excuse to lock down tourists who came to ski. But this time it was the most serious. Even the residents of the town at the foot of the mountain had to move. However, Mansari's friends in the military couldn't find any more information. Chapter 1309. When Mansari came to the dining room, he saw Li Mu and Vestana sitting at the table. They had only been here for 4 days, but they were bored to death. They had been detained for a month last time, but at least they could play with their phones. But this time, even their phones were confiscated. Mansari took the food and walked to the 2 girls. Can I sit here? Do we have the right to object? You're our commander, Li Mu said unhappily. You sound like you're complaining. You don't trust us, Li Mu said straightforwardly. Since when do I not trust you? You confiscated our phones. Are you afraid we'll leak information? That's the rule, not mine. Mansari sat down. It's not just you. Every soldier here doesn't have a phone. In the entire base, there's only one phone to contact the outside world. Just then, a soldier ran in. Commander, there are 2 people outside. They say they're from a subordinate department of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. Huh? That fast? Mansari stood up. Bring him to my office. Mansari stood up and went to the office. He saw a man at the door. He wasn't a soldier, but the man's aura definitely came from a military camp. Klaus glanced at Mansari, but didn't say anything. He retracted his gaze and leaned against the wall. When Mansari opened the door, he saw an old man in his 60s. There was still some snow on him. It seemed that he had braved the snow to come to the base. West turned and saw Mansari. He immediately stood up. Hello, Colonel Mansari. I'm West from the Supernatural Organization. Mansari shook hands, but his attitude was cold. Mansari walked to his chair and sat down. He looked at West. Are you pledging your loyalty to me in advance? Mansari's tone was mocking. West smiled at Mansari. Colonel Mansari, I think you're mistaken. I just hope that you can give us fair treatment after you become the head of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. That's all. Are you suspecting that I won't be fair? Mansari's aggressive attitude annoyed West a little, but West said patiently, because the supernatural organization isn't easily accepted. I hate it when people pretend to be mysterious. I hate scammers. I don't think the Anti-Terrorism Security Department needs a bunch of liars. Liar? Colonel Mansari, do you think we're liars? West finally couldn't hold back his anger, and his tone carried a hint of anger. Am I not clear enough? Mansari looked at West calmly. When I became the head of the Anti-Terrorism Department, the first thing I did was disband the so-called supernatural organization. West took a deep breath. Leon once wanted to do that, but he compromised with us. Do you want to know why? Colonel Mansari. I'm not that kind of coward, Mansari said. I've been on a battlefield, a real one. You can deny us, but you have no right to disband us. Leon doesn't have that right, and neither do you. Our president once made Leon lower his proud head. I'm telling you now, you'll regret it. You'll lower your head to us, I promise. West stood up and slammed his hands on Mansari's desk. I've been there, too. The supernatural organization has been through a war. It was a war far worse than what you know. I won't lower my head to a bunch of scammers. Never. Get out of here. I don't welcome you here. West turned and left the office. He walked to the door and spoke to Klaus in a low voice. Wait. Mansari walked to the door. Is there anything else? West turned to look at Mansari. I suspect that they have stolen our confidential documents. I want you to be searched, Mansari said. Men, search them. Klaus looked at West, and West took a deep breath. Let them search. 2 soldiers came over and began a full-body examination of West and Klaus. West didn't have anything on him, but they found a gun and a military knife on Klaus. Sir, other than the gun and knife, they didn't search for confidential documents. Mansari knew this would be the result. He was just using the opportunity to make things difficult for them. He was just annoyed with them. Give him back the gun, Mansari said. At the same time, he looked at Klaus. You look like a real soldier. Why don't you work for me? Our boss doesn't like traitors, Klaus said calmly. Also, you don't have the right. Your boss? The so-called chairman of the supernatural organization? Mansari sneered at Klaus and West. Can we go now? West asked. Yes. I hope you won't humiliate yourselves next time. I don't care about our rudeness, but you better not be rude to our chairman. He doesn't have a good temper. He won't listen to you. I'm looking forward to meeting your chairman. Let's go. West and Klaus left the base. Mr. West, that guy seems to be very hostile toward us, Klaus said. People from the military are all the same, West said calmly. They all have an attitude of distrust and suspicion. I'm also from the military, Klaus said, speechless. If it was you back then, would you believe in supernatural things? Well, Klaus hesitated for a long time. Indeed, Klaus had been a firm believer in materialism. Back then, he had only believed in the gun in his hand and the teammates behind him. Ignorant people are always so arrogant, West said. But that guy humiliated you like that. Can you take it? What should we do? Kill them all? West suddenly stopped. We seem to have guests. Klaus held a gun in one hand and a knife in the other. In the wind and snow, a few figures could be seen. It's such a big snowstorm, West complained. Why can't these guys stay at home and warm themselves? Why do they have to come out and cause trouble? This is too much. They don't understand the elderly at all. Mr. West, I don't have many bullets. There aren't many of them. As long as you don't waste bullets and shoot one at a time, you can still kill them all. Chapter 13:10. Sir, we heard gunshots in the blizzard. Oh, Mansari frowned. Were those two attacked? Send someone to check the situation. If they're not dead, drag them back. After a while, the soldier ran back. Sir, we didn't find any traces of those two at the scene. There are only 12 of those things' bodies. 12. Mansari's eyes widened. Are you sure? Did they have strong firepower? That makes sense. If they weren't prepared, they wouldn't have dared to come here. Sir, the 12 monsters' fatal wound was in their heads. Each of them was shot in the head by a 0.8mm pistol. That's the number of bullets in a CZ-75 pistol. Impossible. Mansari immediately denied. Pistols can't hit those things, not to mention 1 bullet for one. Also, their skin can't be penetrated by small caliber firearms. The bullets went through their eyeballs, the soldier said. Mansari's pupils contracted. All 12 monsters? Yes, we've checked their bodies. Suddenly, intense gunshots came from outside. Mansari immediately rushed out of the door. Another fierce battle ensued outside the base. The soldiers who had been stationed in front of the defensive structure outside kept shooting at the snowstorm. Figures were moving in the blizzard. The soldiers began to fire wildly and threw grenades from time to time. Da-da-da, boom, Mansari jumped in front of a machine gun and fired into the blizzard. But at that moment, a figure broke through the hail of bullets and jumped into the fortification. It was a giant white wolf. Its body length was more than 3 meters, and it definitely weighed more than 200 kilograms. The white wolf pounced on the soldier closest to it. The other soldiers immediately fired at the white wolf. The white wolf's body was covered in blood, but it didn't fall. It continued to bite the soldier below it. Boom! The soldier pulled the grenade, and with a loud bang, the white wolf was sent flying. The soldier was also killed. Mansari's expression didn't look too good, but the battle continued, and he didn't have time to mourn the dead soldier. At that moment, the base's door opened. Limu and Vestana heard the commotion and came out to check on the situation. However, when he saw the corpse of the giant white wolf on the ground, he was shocked. What are you doing out here? Go back inside. At this time, the battle was very fierce. The sound of wind and snow mixed with the sound of gunfire. Suddenly, a snow-white figure broke through the blockade and charged in. This white figure wasn't a wolf. Or more accurately, it wasn't completely a wolf. He was a size smaller than the white wolf he had killed earlier. He was about 2 meters tall, and he was standing upright. A word popped up in Limu and Vestana's minds: werewolves. The werewolves were too fast. Even at close range, it was difficult to hit them. Moreover, the werewolf would only stagger a few steps after being hit. It wouldn't cause any fatal damage. Mansari's reaction was extremely fast. She raised the shotgun beside her and locked onto the werewolf's head. Bang! The werewolf's head was blasted open and immediately fell to the ground in a bloody mess. However, the werewolf was not completely dead. Mansari fired another shot at the werewolf. The battle lasted for half an hour. Limu and Vestana watched as the soldiers dragged the dead soldier's body inside and cleaned up the battlefield. Other than the white wolf and the werewolf that had charged into the blockade, there were also a few white wolf corpses outside the blockade. Mr. Mansari, can you tell us what's going on? Since you already saw it, why bother asking? Mansari's expression was not good. After all, a soldier had just been killed. We are facing a pack of werewolves. The legendary werewolves? Is that so? Yes. Mansari nodded. I remember the first time you came to Toda Snow Mountain. It was the day of the incident. A tourist was bitten. The townspeople wanted to cover it up, but the doctor from the clinic was an outsider and the incident was exposed. Wait, why did the townspeople want to cover it up? Are they afraid that it will affect the tourist income? No, the townspeople are all descendants of werewolves. They have always been in contact with the werewolves in the Snow Mountain. Because of that incident, the military finally noticed it, Mansari said. Why didn't the military exterminate the werewolves? Can't they do it? At this moment, a soldier hurriedly ran in. Sir, outside, outside. What's going on outside? There's an old man outside. He said he's the representative of the werewolves. He wants to negotiate with you. Mansari rushed out of the base and saw an old man standing at the gate. The soldiers around him were all pointing their guns at the old man. Limu and Vestana followed him out and looked at the situation outside. Mansari stared at the old man. You are a werewolf. We call ourselves the Belvos, the old man said. What do you want to talk to me about? Evacuate, the old man said. Mansari smiled. He did not have the right to order an evacuation. Even if he did, he would not leave. He was going to exterminate these werewolves and this so-called Belvov clan. Do you think that's possible? You humans have betrayed us. Your blockade this time was premeditated. You monsters attacked ordinary people first, Mansari said coldly. And you tried to cover up the truth, which caused the situation to escalate. No, you don't understand at all. The person who was bitten asked for it. He and that doctor, they're not ordinary people. They are Kunkka sect disciples. They wanted to use the military to kill us, the Belvos, Jayu said. I don't care if you're a Kunkka sect disciple, and I don't care what grudges you have. My duty is to lock down this place and kill all the creatures that appear in my sight. You only have two choices now. Either we kill you all or you surrender. Chapter 13:11. Take him away and lock him in our cell, Mansari said. Let him stay with the corpses of his bastards. Watch him. If he dares to do anything strange, kill him. You're keeping me? The old man stared at Mansari. You'll regret it. I've never regretted taking him away. Just like that, the old man was taken away by two soldiers. The two soldiers kept pointing their guns at him. If the old man did anything that made them uneasy, they would shoot immediately. Limu and Vestana stepped aside to make way for the old man. When the old man walked past them, they felt a chill run down their spines. The old man suddenly stopped. The two soldiers behind him raised their guns nervously. Go. Don't move. The old man ignored them. You two don't look like soldiers. Limu and Vestana became even more nervous. Run away. Soon this place will become hell. With that, the old man went straight into the depths of the base. President, that guy has a bad temper. He didn't even give me any face. He even said that he would disband the supernatural organization. Why does he have the same attitude as that old Shou Lian? Chan Zhao asked, annoyed. West only gave a brief explanation. He didn't go into too much detail. If he told Chen Zhao everything that Mansari had done, Chen Zhao would definitely go berserk. Since he doesn't want to coexist peacefully with us, just ignore him. Where are you now? Klaus and I are still in the Canadian border city. When are you coming back? President, I heard some news. Do you want to hear it? What news? It's about the legend of Mount Toda Snow Mountain. The area that the military sealed off? Yes, the legend here, West said. Wester said. Legend has it that there are two legendary creatures in the Great Pagoda, Snow Mountain. One is the wolf spirit, and the other is the snow demon. The wolf spirit is known as the Belvos clan, and the snow demon is known as the Kunkka clan. The two clans have been enemies for generations, killing each other until a human which joined the Belvos. The balance of the war finally tilted towards the Belvos. The snow demons were slaughtered, and the king of the snow demon, Kunkka, was sealed in the Great Pagoda, Snow Mountain. The wolf spirit and snow demon actually exist, right? According to the locals, the wolf spirit is probably a werewolf clan. But werewolves came from Europe in the 18th century, while the legend of the wolf spirit is from the earliest immigrants. West paused for a moment before continuing. I found out that there's a cult in Canada called the Kunkka sect. They believe in the god of the Snow Mountain. Their teachings are very twisted, and their actions are even more extreme. They often kidnap innocent people and send them to the Snow Mountain before dismembering them. Since the last century, there have been more than 23 suspected Kunkka sect sacrificial ceremonies in Canada. Oh, does this have anything to do with us? It has nothing to do with us, but according to my investigation, someone was bitten by a creature suspected to be a wolf on the snowy mountain, and the victim disappeared. So I suspect that the initial victim was just a trap that lured the Belvos and the military into this trap. Actually, we don't need to consider who's right and who's wrong. Don't make things so complicated, Qin Zhao said. Let's consider one thing now. Should we intervene? West froze. If this keeps getting worse and ends up in the hands of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department, we might have to intervene in the end. That's right, Qin Zhao said. So we don't have to wait until it's too late. We have to consider when we can get the most benefits. Then when do you think we should act? If the information you found is true, then Kunkka sect's goal is to release the king of the snow demons. The military base is about to collapse. That's our chance. Under what name? Do we need any name? We're the supernatural organization. Qin Zhao chuckled. Have you forgotten our duty? Qin Zhao never felt that maintaining peace in the supernatural world was the supernatural organization's duty. In reality, most of what they did was passive. Things happened and people came to them. Only then would they act according to the circumstances. But according to the initial concept of the supernatural organization, when they knew of supernatural events, they would act first and solve the problem. In layman's terms, the supernatural organization had always been very inactive and irresponsible. In other words, they wouldn't act unless the higher-ups came to them. President, if that guy still doesn't know what's good for him, I suggest we let him die there. What about his background? He's from the military. Will he cause trouble for us? I've checked his basic files. I've looked into his basic files. He first served in the Marine Corps and was on the YLK battlefield. He was once the captain of a commando team, then served as a flying instructor at an Air Force base for 3 years, and then served as a military officer at the Overseas Combat Command for 2 years. After that, he was transferred back to the country and became an officer in charge of domestic combat operations. To put it simply, this guy is a substitute who fills in the gaps. He was appointed to replace Lei Ong because of Lei Ang's poor performance in recent years and also because he's old. So the higher-ups want to send a more ambitious person to take over the position of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department Minister. His parents are ordinary people without any political background, and he was able to take over the Anti-Terrorism Security Department because of his outstanding performance in the military. Then we'll do as you say. If I still feel his evil intentions when we arrive, to be honest, some things were out of one's control. Qin Zhao used to hate scheming and deceiving people. But now, Qin Zhao had become the kind of person he used to hate the most. For example, Qin Zhao used to hate capitalists, but now he was a real capitalist. People would change, and they would change unknowingly. Don't call me tonight. I don't have time. After hanging up, Qin Zhao entered the river map. Qin Zhao needed to continue learning new spells. The Thousand Swords spell wasn't perfected yet. Chen Zhao could already learn basic attacks, but he could only attack without any technique. Chapter 1312. If it was a small-scale attack, Dark Magma was obviously better than Imperial Thousand Swords. However, Dark Lava's range wasn't large. It could only attack within a 30-meter radius. Beyond that, the density of the attacks would decrease. Royal Thousand Swords was much better in range, but it was much weaker in control than Dark Lava. Dark Lava was produced by Chen Zhao's King of Wrath bloodline. It was as natural as Chen Zhao's hands and feet. But Royal Thousand Swords was more like a craft. It needed to be practiced. Right now, Royal Thousand Swords couldn't compare to Dark Lava. At least, Chen Zhao couldn't control it as he wished. What Chen Zhao needed to practice now was to split the Thousand Swords into 2 waves. Practicing Royal Thousand Swords was difficult and complicated. However, Chen Zhao could feel that Royal Thousand Swords' functionality was even better than his other abilities and spells. However, splitting the Thousand Swords into 2 waves of swords seemed to be easier than he had imagined. Chen Zhao only needed to practice 100 times to do it. It was also easier to control. Chen Zhao started to split them into 4 waves. This was much more difficult than 2. The difficulty suddenly increased by more than 10 times. It was difficult for Chen Zhao to even separate the 4 sword waves, let alone control them. It was very difficult. It might have something to do with human habits. He was used to using both arms, so it was easy for him to split the 2 waves of swords. But he couldn't grasp the point of the 4 waves. Chen Zhao still used the old method, which was the stupidest method. He had to practice tirelessly, correct and try again and again. Humans had muscle memory, but they also had magic memory. There was no such thing as never being able to learn. As long as it was within his abilities and he practiced enough, he would eventually learn. Chen Zhao practiced almost 10,000 times. Now he could barely split them into 4 waves, but he still couldn't attack. When Chen Zhao came out of the river map, it was already late at night. Fei Lai was already asleep. Chen Zhao sat in the middle of Mirror Lake and meditated. This was when Cerberus and Little Nine were the most active. But Little Nine was already very big now. Its growth was completely unlimited. Its body was over 30 meters long, and each head was 80 centimeters in diameter. Its waist was even over 2 meters in diameter. Its appetite was even greater. Every time it ate, it would eat 9 cows. However, every time it ate, it would not eat or drink for several days. In terms of diet, they were similar to ordinary snakes. They ate a lot of food at once and needed time to digest it. Every time it was digested, it would grow a lot bigger. Luckily, Little Nine was not a picky eater and would not insist on some expensive beef. In order to provide food for Little Nine, Chen Zhao raised 100 cows on a plain not far from Mirror Lake. Of course, they were all left to fend for themselves. There was no one to take care of them. But these hundreds of cows, it was estimated that in less than 2 months, they would be almost completely eaten by Little Nine. Chen Zhao thought about raising more cows. Based on Little Nine's growth rate, Chen Zhao had no doubt that Little Nine's appetite would triple in a year. Everyone get ready. There will be a terrifying snowstorm tonight. Mansari looked at the howling snowstorm with a hint of worry in her eyes. Mansari looked at Limu and Vestana. Both of them were a little uneasy. They all felt that the situation was not good. They did not know if it was the old werewolf's warning. Not just them, but all the soldiers felt like they were facing a great enemy. "Do you two know how to use machine guns?" Mansari asked. "All I have to do is pull the trigger, right?" Vestana asked. "Forget it." Mansari shook her head. Using a gun was not as simple as pulling the trigger. If they thought that they only needed to pull the trigger, they would only hurt themselves and their companions. Just then, a soldier ran in from outside. "Sir, there are more than 10 people outside." "More than 10 people? Are they the bastards' companions again?" They did not say who they are, but they said they are willing to help us fight against those werewolves. Frowning, Mansari strode outside. When he walked outside, he saw more than 10 men and women. This alarmed him because werewolves looked almost the same as humans before they changed. He could not help but suspect that these people were actually werewolves. "Who are you people?" An old man stood out from the group. He held a wooden cane in his hand, and his beard almost reached his abdomen. He looked like the sage from Lord of the Rings. "We are the enemies of the Belvos," the old man said. "Why should I believe you?" Mansari looked at them cautiously. "How do I know that you are not those bastards?" "We do not need to prove anything," the old man said. "You just need to see what we can do." "Then what can you do?" The old man tapped the ground with his cane, and the snow around him suddenly rolled. All the soldiers and Mansari became alert as they looked at the strange scene. Then an ice wall rose from the ground. The ice wall slowly rose, and the ice wall was covered with spikes. Everyone was dumbfounded, and their faces were filled with astonishment. "What is going on?" Mansari's expression became serious. "How did you do it? Since you have seen werewolves before, are you surprised to see magic again?" The old man looked at Mansari. Mansari's eyes were like lightning as he examined the dozen people behind the old man. "They are like you?" "Yes, we have been enemies with the Belvos for generations. The meaning of our existence is to eradicate the Belvos." For some reason, he felt that these people were not as noble as they said. They had their own goals. "Can your magic stop the blizzard?" Mansari asked. To the soldiers in the base, the biggest enemy was not the werewolves, but the blizzard. The snowstorm affected them too much. Every time, the werewolves would attack during the blizzard. "No, we do not have enough power to stop the blizzard. You can stay, but you cannot enter the base. Are you going to let us stand in the cold all day?" The old man looked at Mansari. "Can't you use magic to build ice walls? You can build your own ice castle. Also, you are not cold, right?" Chapter 13:13. The wind howled in the darkness. In the blizzard, pairs of bloodthirsty and violent green eyes appeared. Inside the fortifications outside the base, the soldiers all saw those hostile eyes. Victory or defeat depends on this. Children, for our mother, Kanka. For our mother, Kanka. Kanka. Kanka's followers roared and prepared for battle, even though Kanka's followers were scheming and far-sighted, leading the military and the Belvos into a trap step by step. But Kanka's followers still didn't dare to underestimate their old enemy, the Belvos. They had an army, the Atavism army. The Belvos were the largest werewolf clan in North America. They were also called the Snow Wolf clan, and they were different from other werewolf clans. Like zombies, they could bite and infect ordinary humans, and then obtain new clan members. But these infected humans didn't turn into werewolves, but into the Atavism werewolves. They would turn into giant wolves. Their intelligence would degenerate, but their strength and speed were above ordinary people. They weren't afraid of death, and they were cruel and bloodthirsty. They were loyal to the Belvos. As long as it was an order from the Belvos, they would unswervingly carry it out. If Kanka's followers relied on themselves, they couldn't defeat the Belvos. That was why they needed the military. The battle was about to begin. The sound of machine guns being loaded could be heard everywhere. The soldiers were also very nervous. The situation this time was even more urgent than last time. Mansari came in front of the Kanka elder and asked solemnly, "Are you sure?" "No, but we will try our best to kill those bastards," the elder said. Mansari was satisfied. He didn't care what these people's intentions were. As long as they could help them fight, that was enough. Can't the military send reinforcements? Now that the Belvos are all gathered there, if we can bombard them now, it will definitely have an extraordinary effect, the Kuinka elder said with glowing eyes. Bomb. In this snowstorm, planes can't even get close to this area. let alone guarantee accuracy. The biggest possibility of a force bombing is that the bomb will fall on our heads. The Kunkka elder looked disappointed and turned to the forest. There were more and more lights in the forest. The Belvos were gathering their army. Inside the fortifications of the base, there were 2 airborne machine guns, howitzers, various firearms, and a large amount of ammunition. Pitter-patter, the base was empty, but there were sounds that made people uneasy. "Lee, do you hear that?" It seems to be coming from the dungeon. Since the day when they knew the truth, they had been in a state of uneasiness. Especially tonight's vigilance, the 2 of them were considered non-combatants. So the 2 of them were the only ones guarding the empty base, which made them even more uneasy. The entire base was so quiet that only the sound of water dripping could be heard. Should we go to the dungeon to take a look? In the dungeon is that old werewolf in prison there. Are we really going? I remember that there are 2 soldiers guarding it. Nothing will happen. The 2 girls supported each other and carefully walked down the stairs. It sounded like something was chewing, and it did come from the depths of the dungeon. When they arrived at the dungeon, they saw 2 guards lying on the ground. But they were not dead, at least not yet. One of them had a severe bite wound on his neck, and the other had a bite wound on his abdomen. They kept twitching on the ground, moaning in pain. The 2 girls wanted to go up and save the 2 soldiers. But as soon as they approached, they saw a figure lying on the ground in the corner of the prison. The old man's tattered clothes were still hanging on his body, but his body had become extremely tall. White fur covered his entire body, but there were still bloodstains on the white fur. This tall werewolf was the old man. The old werewolf was lying on the ground, eating the bodies of his own kind. Ah, Vestana and Limu were so scared that their limbs turned cold. They had never seen such a bloody scene. The old werewolf turned his head and looked at the 2 girls, but he ignored them and continued eating the bodies on the ground. Limu immediately picked up the gun on the ground and pointed it at the old werewolf. The old werewolf seemed to have sensed something and turned to look at Limu. "Child, this has nothing to do with you." The old werewolf stood up. He was taller than the werewolves the 2 girls had seen before, at least 3 meters tall. Was this still the old man? Was he really the old man in disguise? The 2 girls were so scared that their faces turned pale. The old werewolf easily twisted the iron bars with his claws, as if he was twisting 2 noodles. When the old werewolf stood in front of Limu and Vestana, the 2 girls were so scared that they did not dare to move. That terrifying aura felt like they would be torn apart if they moved even a little. The old werewolf raised his claws lightly, picked up the machine gun in Limu's hand, and threw it far away. "As long as you stay here obediently, you will not be harmed. This war has nothing to do with you," the old werewolf said. What do you want?" Limu mustered up his courage and asked, "What do I want?" "To win this war," the old werewolf replied. At this time, the bodies of the 2 bitten soldiers on the ground began to change rapidly. The spasms intensified. Limu and Vestana could feel the pain they were suffering. Finally, the first soldier's body began to transform from a human into a wolf. Then, the second soldier turned into a wolf. The 2 snow wolves that had just completed their transformation stared at Limu and Vestana like tigers watching their prey. Their eyes were filled with hunger. "Go and eat what's inside. This war has nothing to do with them," the old werewolf ordered. The 2 snow wolves looked at the 2 girls, but in the end they turned back into the prison and began to devour the corpses. "We are not beasts," the old werewolf said. "At least we are rational. Even beasts would not eat the corpses of their own kind," Vestana said angrily. "Yes, only humans will eat people," the old werewolf said. "I have no choice but to do this. Werewolves can't eat the corpses of their own kind. If they eat the corpses of their own kind, they won't be far from death. However, in order to win this war, I can only eat the corpses of my own kind. In order to survive, they have just completed their transformation. If they can't eat, they will die quickly. Chapter 13-14. Do you think that we, the Belvos, started this war? The old werewolf said, "This is all part of Kunka's conspiracy, and we, the Belvos, have no time to waste. In June, the snow and ice on the mountain will melt, and all of us will turn into snow wolves. This will continue until November, and we will return to our werewolf form. So we don't have time to waste. We must end this war as soon as possible." Why did that Kunka do this? To break the seal. The old werewolf said, "Before the Belvos came to this land, this place was already occupied by a group of demons. We fought with them for hundreds of years, and then we reached an agreement with the humans to eliminate these demons together and seal their leader, Kunka, into our bloodline. But that period of history is so far away that the humans have forgotten the oath they once made with us. The remnants of Kunka's tribe are plotting to hunt us down. As long as they kill enough Belvos, they can use our blood to break the seal. I took the initiative to enter this place and devour the bodies of my fellow tribesmen so that there won't be any future trouble. Of course, this will also allow me to increase my strength in a short period of time. Then I will cooperate with my tribesmen outside to destroy this base and kill all the soldiers. This is the only way to end this war. In other words, you are actually the invaders. Whatever you think, but aren't you humans the same?" The old werewolf did not deny it. "Once Kunka is resurrected, you will be banished from this snowy land forever. She used to be the ruler of this snowy land. The Belvos and humans sacrificed countless people to defeat Kunka, so we will never let this hard-won victory be overturned. But now, you humans are standing on the opposite side. Humans are no longer the barbarians of the past. The human army can crush everything," Westana said firmly. "Humans may be able to rule everything outside, but not here. The human army can't even enter this place," the old werewolf said indifferently. The old werewolf said indifferently. He was once a human and hid in the human society. His understanding of humans was no less than Limu and Westana. "Kunka is much scarier than you can imagine. In the era of Kunka's existence, this place was a forbidden zone for other creatures. Any creature that entered this place could not leave alive. But the Belvos and humans still defeated Kunka in the end, didn't they? They can still do it now. Your thinking is too simple. Defeating Kunka is almost equivalent to starting a war. This is the border between the United States and Canada. Do you think the governments of these two countries would allow a war to happen within their borders?" The old werewolf's tone suddenly paused as a wolf's howl seemed to come from outside. "The war has begun." At the same time, Klaus and Wester were standing on a snow-covered cliff. Below the cliff was the military base. "Phew, it's really cold here." Klaus shivered. "Fuck you." Wester rolled his eyes at Klaus and tugged at his down jacket. "You're the one who insisted on wearing this thin field outfit. How can I fight while wearing a down jacket?" Klaus felt cold, but it was not to the point where he could not bear it. "Mr. Wester, why don't you learn other spells, such as fire? That can bring me some warmth." The temperature below 20 degrees Celsius, coupled with the attack of the snowstorm, did cause some trouble for him, but it was not fatal. "Their battle has begun," Klaus said with a pair of binoculars. "It's about time to inform the president and the others." "You call the president. I'll call Gaia and the others." "No, the president just said not to call him tonight. It's 3 in the morning now. If you call him now, he might kill you." Klaus immediately refused. "You asterisk shoal, that's an order. Mr. Wester, why don't you call?" Wester did not want to call either. It was scary to disturb Chun Zhao's sleep, especially since Feilai's belly was so big now. Chun Zhao almost stopped anything that could disturb her, especially the phone. Whatever. The military base below isn't that easy to break through. I believe they can last until dawn. God bless them. Wester did not plan on saving the people in the military anyway. If they died, so be it. I think the president knows a little wolf girl. Huh? Does the president know other werewolves? If we just stand by and watch, won't the guild leader blame us? There are so many werewolves in the world. That little wolf girl's fur color is different from these snow wolves, Wester said disapprovingly. Also, that little wolf girl is bigger than these snow wolves. The shape of her head is also different, so I'm sure that they're not from the same tribe. Hearing Wester's analysis, Klaus also heaved a sigh of relief. There were no written rules in the association, but everyone had an unspoken rule. They had to help each other. If they were related to each other's family, they had to help their family. For example, if Klaus saw Gaia's son Evans being bullied by other kids, he would also go and kick the kids, but is there a big difference between each werewolf tribe? There are some obvious differences, but most of them are relatively normal. For example, these Belvos are obviously small werewolves. Generally, an adult werewolf is about 5 meters tall, but this group of werewolves is only 2 meters tall. But their speed is really fast, and in terms of defense, they are also stronger than ordinary werewolves. Those spiritualists are Kunkka's disciples, right? Are they the ones stirring up trouble behind the scenes? It should be them. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared in the distance. Klaus and Wester both realized that a figure had appeared in the distance. Roar! It was a Belvos werewolf. Wester and Klaus did not expect that a werewolf would run here and coincidentally run into them while the battle was so intense. This werewolf was smaller than an adult werewolf, around 7 meters tall. But since it was a werewolf, they could not judge its strength like normal people. All werewolves were dangerous to a certain extent. Chapter 13:15. The little werewolf clearly ignored West's warning and attacked West and Klaus directly. Klaus went forward and the little werewolf swung its claws at Klaus. But Klaus dodged it easily. He grabbed the little werewolf's arm and twisted it before kicking it. The little werewolf rolled several meters away. The intense pain almost made him unable to stand up, but he still stood up while enduring the pain. He was from the Belwolf tribe. How could he fall at the hands of others? The little werewolf encouraged himself. His claws moved unconsciously, as if he couldn't wait to tear apart the 2 humans in front of him. Little guy, if I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead already. Don't ask for trouble. Awoo! The little werewolf responded to Klaus with an angry howl. The little werewolf pounced forward again, waving its claws even faster. But it still couldn't touch Klaus's body. It couldn't even touch the corner of his shirt. The little werewolf's attacks became more urgent. Klaus kicked the little werewolf's stomach again. The little werewolf rolled several meters away again. West was not interested in this child bullying fight at all. That's right, it was bullying kids. Who was Klaus? Before joining the supernatural organization, he was the elite of the elites in the Marine Corps. His combat skills weren't invincible, but he rarely had a match. After joining the supernatural organization, he'd been strengthened by Qin Zhao. His speed, strength, and reflexes were all beyond ordinary people. Klaus was too lazy to kill a kid. He wanted to see how long the little werewolf could last. West, on the other hand, looked at the battlefield below the cliff and took out his phone. Hey, Minister Leon, you need a military transport plane. No, West. Who do you think I am? Your subordinate? Leon received West's call in the middle of the night. His tone was somewhat dissatisfied. Of course, most of them were dissatisfaction towards West and a strong sense of enmity towards him. West's tone had completely climbed over him, which made him even more displeased. Minister Leon, if you want to resign with dignity, you better do as I say. West didn't have any respect for Leon now. It could be said that Lei Ong had abandoned his dignity. If he hadn't had a conflict with Chen Zhao back then, the supernatural organization would still be under his command. Lei Ong was furious, but he couldn't do anything now, because he was about to resign. If he had 2 more years, he might have a chance to slowly fight against West and the supernatural organization, but now he had less than half a year. If he went against the supernatural organization, he would be the one who would be hurt, especially after he resigned. How would the supernatural organization retaliate against him? Just thinking about it made him shudder. To where? Canada, toe to snowy mountains. There's no need to land. Our people can jump directly from the sky. Great Pagoda Snow Mountain? Leong raised his eyebrows. Didn't you reject my invitation? After some discussion, our president suddenly felt that we should contribute to the stability and peace of the region. The little scheme in Lei Ang's heart suddenly emerged. West, what's the situation at Toda Snowy Mountains? It's not looking good. The werewolves have already launched an all-out attack on the military base. That's not the most troublesome thing. The most troublesome thing is that after our investigation, we realized that some hidden forces are involved. West didn't hide anything and told Qin Zhao the general situation. To put it bluntly, he was asking for credit. Lei Ang's heart raced. West, you're saying that there's a powerful demon sealed in that place? Is that so? Yes. Delay it for a while and release the demon, Leong said in a low voice. West's expression also changed slightly. He realized Lei Ang's intention. Let the demon cause destruction. It's best if he causes casualties in the nearby towns. Then you can act in the name of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. West laughed. You're too simple, Minister Leong. There are no towns within dozens of kilometers. The closest one is 240 kilometers away from Toda Snowy Mountains. Also, we don't know if the demon called Kunkka has that much destructive power. West had rejected Lei Ang's request, but he had a deeper reason. Qin Zhao wouldn't allow this to happen. They could do nothing, but that didn't mean they could purposely let civilians die for their own purposes. If they did that, the entire organization would be divided. After all, most members definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. Lei Ang's idea was to let the higher-ups of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department know how serious the situation was. If they couldn't solve it, but the Anti-Terrorism Security Department could, then Leong would be able to get enough credit. By then, he might not resign, but get a promotion. West was willing to benefit from the supernatural organization, but that was only if the situation allowed it. He wouldn't destroy the unity of the organization. Qin Zhao trusted West, not only because he was cunning. The main reason was that West was always clear-headed. His magic was slow field, but the predecessor of slow field was actually sharp mind. Leong was anxious too. He'd asked the supernatural organization to help because he wanted to do Mansari a favor. Moreover, he didn't think that the situation at Toda Snowy Mountains was that bad. But after hearing West's words, he realized that the situation was more serious than he'd imagined. But it was precisely because of this that he found a trace of hope. Give me 3 hours. I'll report to the higher-ups. West thought for a moment. 3 hours? Perfect. There were only 3 hours until daybreak. He could inform Qin Zhao and the others, then fly over. The timing was just right. Okay, 3 hours. West glanced at the battlefield below. The military base could still hold on for now. Of course, how long would it last would depend on how much ammo and firepower the base had. It also depended on how determined the Belvos were to take down the military base. Up until now, the Belvos hadn't really launched an all-out attack. They didn't seem to be willing to pay the price of more casualties. They'd been restraining their rhythm. But to West, this was the stupidest method. Not contributing to the military base in the shortest time possible would give them more time and increase the casualties. Chapter 13:16. Strange. No matter how stupid the Belvos are, they should know that ending the battle in a short time is better than delaying it like this, right? West looked at the battlefield below, puzzled. At this time, Klaus walked up. No, they're very smart. The Belvos have almost no casualties. They're creating the illusion of an all-out attack, but in reality, they've been moving around in the forest. They're wasting the military's ammunition. If they attack directly, it'll only increase the casualties. "Where's that little werewolf?" Wes turned around and realized that the little werewolf had disappeared. He ran away. Ran away! I wanted to knock him out, but I didn't manage to knock him out. Then he turned and ran when he realized that he couldn't beat me. I wanted to chase him, but I couldn't run fast in the snow. Klaus was also a little embarrassed. Wes didn't care. It was just a little werewolf, anyway. Klaus didn't kill him probably because he couldn't bear to. If Klaus wanted to, he would have done it long ago. Those Kunkka disciples didn't seem to do much either. That's not strange. They don't have good intentions. They probably want the military and the Belvos to fight to the death. West and Klaus were spectators, so they could see clearly. However, Mansari, who was an insider, also saw something fishy. "Why didn't you do anything? You've been watching from the sidelines." Mansari questioned Kunkka. His tone was full of doubt and distrust. "What do you want us to do? Charge into the forest and die? We'll be shot full of holes by your soldiers before we even get in. If those cunning bastards don't come out, there's nothing we can do." "We don't have much ammunition left," Mansari said. "We can't let them stall like this. I can't do anything either. If they could charge out with all their strength, the situation would be better. But if they don't come out, there's nothing I can do," Kunkka said helplessly. Kunkka finally understood. The Belvos had been tricked by them, but they weren't stupid. If one more of their clansmen died, Kunkka's seal would weaken. That was why they used this method, to stall for time. They wanted the base to run out of ammunition before launching an all-out attack. The corner of Kunkka's mouth inadvertently revealed a trace of coldness. Mansari saw Kunkka's cold eyes and became even more wary of them. The battle had been going on for several hours. It was already 7 in the morning, but the sky was still gray and there was almost no light. The snowstorm lasted for an entire day and showed no signs of subsiding. Instead, it became more and more intense. Mansari was getting more and more impatient. This couldn't go on. The situation must be changed. Mansari glanced at the base behind her. "Retreat into the base. Don't waste your bullets outside," Mansari yelled. In an open space, these wolf cubs could rely on the terrain to dodge, and they could also distance themselves. Medium and small caliber firearms do very little damage to them, unless he could close the distance. However, under such circumstances, there was only one way to close the distance. That was to introduce the Belvov werewolves into the facade, using the layout of the building to eliminate these wolf cubs. The soldiers retreated into the building one after another. The followers of Kunkka followed. Just as Mansari expected, the werewolves began to rush into the entrance. The prepared soldiers had already set up machine guns on the opposite side of the entrance. The soldiers immediately returned fire. One of the werewolves was immediately shot full of holes. At this time, the Belvov werewolves that surrounded them began to attack from all directions. They didn't just attack the main entrance. They also used their climbing and jumping abilities to climb the walls of the base and enter from the roof. "We can start now," Kunkka whispered to the people around him. While the soldiers weren't paying attention, one of the followers left. Mansari was already on guard against these followers. When he saw one leave, he immediately yelled, "Stop, where are you going?" However, the follower didn't care about Mansari's yelling and continued to leave. "Stop!" Mansari pointed his gun at the follower. "Colonel, the werewolves have already attacked from other places." "He's going to stop them," Kunkka said. A whoa! Just then, a loud wolf howl came from outside. Then, a wolf howl came from the dungeon. 2 snow-white giant wolves rushed out of the dungeon and bit anyone they saw. In an instant, the scene became chaotic. "Damn it!" Mansari immediately turned his gun around. He didn't expect 2 giant wolves to rush out of the dungeon. The originally prepared defense also fell into chaos. A few more giant wolves rushed in from the entrance of the base. The Kunkka follower from before had already left during the chaos. He found the location of the armory. There was also a large amount of ammunition stored in the armory, including many high explosives. Boom, 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 violent explosions kept erupting inside the base. In an instant, the ground shook, and the entire building was on the verge of collapse. This was the Kunkka followers' plan. They wanted the Belvov werewolves to enter the base and then detonate the armory. Terrifying shockwaves were constantly being released, one after another in an endless stream. Everyone was caught up in the explosion that had been carefully planned, including the old werewolf in the dungeon, Limu and Vestana. The Kunkka follower used their ice magic to create ice walls and wrap themselves in them. But some Kunkka followers were still caught in the explosion. The ice was not truly indestructible. After all, it was a weapon that could sustain a war. The destructive power of detonating it at the same time was almost unimaginable. At this moment, both the werewolves and the human soldiers were helpless in the face of this sudden disaster. The air was filled with the smell of blood and smoke. The entire base was razed to the ground in the violent explosion. Great Lord of Winter, King of Ice, Holy Spirit of the Blizzard, I offer my filthy blood to you. Answer my call. Use your power of winter to freeze all the unforgivable. Wake up, my mother, Kunkka! Wake up, our mother, Kunkka! Wake up! All the Kunkka followers shouted at the top of their lungs and chanted magic spells together with the old man. Mansari was lucky to not die, but he was seriously injured. He tried his best to prop himself up and pointed his gun at a Kunkka follower. Bang! Mansari fired without hesitation. Chapter 13:17. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chen Zhao was woken up by the helicopter's roar. Chen Zhao glanced at Fei Lai beside him. She'd woken up too. Fei Lai's senses had become much stronger recently. Even the slightest movement would be noticed by her. Are they here for you? Darling. Sleep a bit more, Chen Zhao said. Just then, there was a loud knock on the door. Chen Zhao could tell that it was Jerlin. She'd also been woken up by the helicopter's roar. Dad, Mom, open the door, open the door. Chen Zhao got up helplessly and opened the door. Jerlin immediately hugged Chen Zhao's leg. Dad, are you going out? Auntie Gaia is flying the plane outside. Little Jerlin had seen the helicopter outside. It belonged to the association. Dad, can I take Jerlin there? Fei Lai pulled Jerlin over. Jerlin, if you want to take a plane, I'll have Auntie Gaia fly it herself next time. I have to go out to work now. Chen Zhao didn't want to take Jerlin to the cold, snowy mountains. Jerlin had always stayed in the warmer LA area. She'd never been to such a cold area. She wouldn't be able to adapt. Plus, Chen Zhao was going to fight monsters. No matter what, it would be dangerous. Chen Zhao couldn't bring Jerlin. With Fei Lai's help, Chen Zhao finally got rid of Jerlin. He boarded the helicopter. Gaia, why are you flying the helicopter? Where are they? They went to the air base first. I'm here to pick you up, Gaia said. Is it West's plane again? Yes. Gaia nodded. Sit tight. Do you need earmuffs? Chen Zhao realized that Gaia's style of flying was completely different from Klaus. When Klaus flew the helicopter, he did all sorts of cool and difficult moves. Gaia, on the other hand, could only be described as stable. It was obvious that Gaia knew how to fly a helicopter, but her skills were average. Comparatively, Klaus was more like a racer. In terms of flying a helicopter, Klaus was clearly better. After arriving at the air base, Chen Zhao and Gaia were sent to a Hercules transport plane. Everyone from the supernatural organization was on the plane, including Adonis. Air. Aduz, why are you here? Chen Zhao looked at Aduz, speechless. I want to skydive, skydive, Aduz said matter-of-factly. If you leave, who will look after the headquarters? Agars and Lady Pamela aren't here. They can just watch. Chen Zhao entered the cabin and sat down. Are we skydiving this time? According to the weather report, there's a level 12 snowstorm in the Toda Snowy Mountains area. We won't be able to get close to the area if we fly at a low altitude. We can only drop it from above at least 8,000 meters, said Gaia. Chen Zhao yawned. Call me when we're there. The Hercules began to take off. An officer in uniform came out of the forecastle. Hello, I'm the co-pilot of the Blackbird, Sergeant Olon. Euron looked at the strange passengers in front of him. To be honest, he really couldn't figure out who these people were and where they came from. He could tell that a few of them were from the military, but most of the others looked like ordinary people. There were old people, women, children, and even transvestites. What was the point of this transport mission? Also, could they really complete the parachute jump? Skydiving was an extremely dangerous sport. The biggest danger wasn't that the parachute couldn't be opened, but the change in air pressure from high to low. Without proper training, the change in air pressure could cause lung bleeding or even lung rupture. This time, they had to jump from 8,000 meters in the sky. There was also a severe snowstorm in the area. It was very unsuitable for skydiving. There was only a parachute in the plane, not a respirator. Therefore, they could only rely on their own abilities. Euron's gaze swept across everyone in the cabin. None of them paid attention to him. Some were even sleeping. Ladies and gentlemen, do you need me to explain to you the precautions for skydiving? Yes. Aduz looked at Euron, his eyes shining. Apart from Aduz, no one else paid attention to Euron. The Hercules was very fast on a flight mission without any wait. In less than 2 hours, the plane arrived at the Totus Snow Mountains. Teacher, we're here. Time to wake up. Little Grove nudged Chen Zhao. Hey, Grove, you're here too. Little Grove was speechless. Teacher, I've been sitting beside you for 2 hours. Don't you know? Chen Zhao rubbed his sleepy eyes. Are we here already? In the ruins. The blood seemed to be unaffected by gravity. It kept extending upward. The strong snowstorm couldn't blow the blood away. The blood gathered in the air. Gradually, the color of the blood began to change, and a white vortex appeared. Mother, Kunkka, show yourself. Mother, Kunkka! Suddenly, the ruins shook violently. A figure charged out of the ruins and pounced on a Kunkka believer. Mansari was shocked. So big. This werewolf is so big. The fallen believer's neck was bitten off by the werewolf before he could resist. The other Kunkka believers immediately fought back. The old Kunkka looked at the old werewolf. Rosend, you lost. The old man clearly knew him. The old werewolf Rosenberg raised his head and looked at the white cyclone in the air. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Just then, more snow wolves and werewolves appeared. The explosion was fierce, but it wasn't enough to kill all the Belva werewolves. Limu and Westana also crawled out from under Faith. They looked around and saw Mansari lying on the ground. They immediately rushed over. Colonel Mansari, are you okay? You're still alive? Mansari stared at the two girls in disbelief. They didn't die from the explosion. The old werewolf saved us, Limu said. He protected us. Colonel Mansari, the Belvav aren't our enemy. The real enemy is the Kunkka. Mansari's eyes flashed as he looked at the scene. He could vaguely feel that things were really as Rosen said. It was all a plot by the Kunkka believers, but he couldn't decide who the enemy was. He was just a soldier. He'd always been following orders. The surrounding werewolves and snow wolves started the fiercest battle with the Kunkka believers. The werewolves and snow wolves had an absolute advantage in numbers. The Kunkka believers could barely hold on. Chapter 1318. Kunkka's followers were few in number. Facing the crazy werewolves, they could only retreat step by step. As the number of Kunkka's followers decreased, Elder Kunkka's chanting became faster and faster. Suddenly, the blizzard stopped. It stopped without any warning. Then, everyone felt something in the sky. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky. A huge icicle had appeared in the sky. The icicle was at least 5 meters long. It was like a finely cut diamond with distinct edges, and it was shining with colorful light. Just as everyone was intoxicated by the huge icicle, something happened. The icicles suddenly exploded, and thousands of fragments turned into the densest blades, scattering in all directions. The snow wolves and werewolves fell instantly. The blood of the snow wolves and werewolves gathered in the cyclone above Elder Kunka's head. Rosenberg was also hit by the icicle shards. A few bloodstains appeared on his snow-white wolf skin. However, he did not fall. Rosenberg roared and pounced towards the cyclone. Suddenly, a wave of air rippled out from the cyclone. Rosenberg, who was in midair, was also knocked back more than 10 meters by the wave of air. In the center of the cyclone, a woman appeared. A completely naked woman. This woman was extremely beautiful. Her hair was like silver threads, her face was like frost, and her eyes were blood red. Kunka, mother, welcome back. Kunka, mother, welcome back. Is this woman Kunka? Manzali stared at the woman. Kunka's face was as cold as ice. His silver hair swayed even though there was no wind. Facing the roaring werewolves and snow wolves, Kunka suddenly raised his arm and waved. Countless icicles appeared under the feet of the wolves and werewolves. Instant kill. Mansali's expression was extremely serious. What a terrifying woman! The blood of the wolves and werewolves was absorbed by the icicles. The icicles turned blood red. The corners of Kunka's mouth finally curled up into a carefree smile, and he gently licked his lips. How many years has it been? Finally, I can drink blood again. Kunka showed a longing expression. Awoo! Rosenberg roared and charged at Kunka, but an icicle shot out from under Rosenberg's feet. Rosenberg's movements were even faster as he quickly dodged. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, another icicle rose up. He dodged it, and another icicle rose up. Rosenberg was always able to avoid the sudden spikes on the ground. Kunka's lips curled into a smile as he waved his arm. Hundreds of ice spikes appeared under Rosenberg's feet. Rosenberg's heart skipped a beat. His beast-like instincts made him feel an extreme sense of danger. Rosenberg took a few steps back in shock. The snowy ground where he had been standing had turned into a thicket of ice thorns. The werewolf and the snow wolf took advantage of Rosenberg's distraction to attack again. But Kunka did not even turn his head. A cold gust of wind suddenly blew past his back. Dozens of werewolves and snow wolves were instantly frozen into a huge, square block of ice. The originally crystal-clear ice cube quickly turned red. Kunka was absorbing their blood again. How terrifying! The Belvos are simply courting death. It's hopeless. Kunka's appearance has completely turned the tide of the battle. Even if the entire Belvov clan uses all their strength, they won't be able to defeat Kunka. Mansari's face was filled with despair. Bang! Suddenly, Kunka's left shoulder exploded. But Kunka's shoulder did not bleed. It was as if the ice cube had been shattered. The cold air once again converged on Kunka's shoulder, restoring it to its perfect state. Everyone, including Kunka, was surprised by this. They all looked to the left, where there was a steep cliff covered in thick snow. Kunka also looked at the cliff, and his face turned slightly cold. Suddenly, a huge icicle appeared above the cliff, and the icicle exploded in an instant. Ah! Klaus and West scrambled away from the scene. The two of them slipped and rolled down the snowy ground from the cliff. Mansari looked and saw that it was West and Klaus. They did not leave. They were here the whole time. Kunka used the same trick again, and another icicle appeared above the two of them before exploding. Just as the ice shards shot toward West and Klaus, they suddenly stopped. It was as if time had stopped. Mansari's pupils shrank. What was going on? Was it magic? Klaus raised his sniper rifle and fired a bullet. Bang! Kunka's head shattered. Finished? Everyone stared at Klaus, and then at Kunka, dumbfounded. The arrogant Kunka was destroyed just like that? He was killed by a sniper just like that? The crowd did not know whether to be surprised or happy. But before they could react, Kunka's head healed again. Several huge ice cones appeared around Kunka's body and pointed at West and Klaus. Die! Whoosh! The ice cones shot toward the two. Dodge! West yelled. He could not block such a powerful attack with his field of sluggishness. The field of sluggishness was not omnipotent. The stronger the attack, the more it consumed his field of sluggishness. The two split up and fled to the left and right. Rosenberg couldn't care less about the background of these two people. He only knew that since they were Kunka's enemies, they were his allies on the battlefield. Rosenberg charged at Kunka. Kunka was caught off guard and was knocked down by Rosenberg. But the next moment, Rosenberg's claw could not reach him, because his claw was firmly held by Kunka. Wolf Pup, do you really think you can defeat me? Kunka's strength was much greater than his. Her 10 fingers were all sharp ice thorns, and she swept them heavily at Rosenberg. 5 ghastly claw marks were left on Rosenberg's face. I've had enough of this farce. It's time to end it, Kunka said coldly. At this moment, Kunka's doppelgangers appeared one after another. There were countless of them in the sky and on the ground. Kunka's doppelgangers began to attack every enemy on the scene. Boom! Suddenly, a flame descended from the sky. A woman covered in raging flames stood on the snowy ground. Everyone was shocked by this woman's sudden appearance. Manzali looked at Gaia in disbelief. Who was this woman, and where did she come from? Gaia swung her flaming sword and spun in a circle. More than a dozen of Kunka's doppelgangers were instantly killed. Another one to die? Kunka looked at Gaia. Although Gaia's appearance was indeed impressive, Kunka's expression did not change. She did not think that anyone could defeat her. Her doppelgangers were endless. No matter how strong Gaia was, she could not stop her doppelganger army. Suddenly, a parachute landed on her head and enveloped her completely. Everyone saw an old man land on the ground. Chapter 1319. Run! Gaia roared as he ran toward Aduz. Aduz was a complete novice. He didn't even realize that his parachute had caught something. Confused, Aduz turned around and saw that the parachute on his back seemed to contain someone. However, before he could get close to see what was going on, the parachute was torn open. Countless ice spikes pierced out of the parachute. Kunka's back was like a sea urchin. It was full of sharp, slender ice spikes. Kunka's face darkened. No one would be happy after being insulted like this. Aduz was so frightened that he ran away. Kunka pointed at Aduz, and countless Kunka clones attacked Aduz. Suddenly, a bone spear fell from the sky and landed on Aduz's back. The moment the bone spear landed, a gray aura spread in all directions with the spear as the center. The clones that got close to the bone spear instantly melted into ice and snow. Another parachute dropped, and Helis landed on the ground smoothly. Numerous bone spears appeared around Helis and pointed in all directions. Mansari's heart jumped. She looked up at the sky. As expected, there were more than 10 parachutes descending. Were they all members of the supernatural organization? Had they predicted that things would develop like this? Was that why they were prepared? Chen Zhao finally landed. He took off the parachute and loosened his shoulders. When Li Mu and West saw him, they couldn't help but be stunned. Professor Chen. That's Professor Chen? How did he get here? Wait, look at that person. Isn't that Lit Grove? Lit Grove was quite famous in the school, so there were quite a few students who knew him. Li Mu and West Anna really couldn't understand why Qin Zhao and Lit Grove would appear here. President, you're finally here. If you were any slower, Klaus and I would probably die here. Chen Zhao looked at Kunka, but in the end, his gaze landed on the few Kunka followers. West, should we get a uniform-style uniform when we get back? Okay. Is that naked Kunka? Chen Zhao asked, pointing at him. Guild leader, you can feel it? It's not that I can feel it. It's just that her style is too obvious. Qin Zhao's voice wasn't soft. At least, Kunkka heard everything he said. Kunkka's expression turned even colder. Human, you are provoking a terrifying enemy. Do you think we're here for a vacation? Qin Zhao didn't care about Kunkka's threat. You are here to be buried in this sea of snow, Kunkka said coldly. The wind was blowing. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. He could feel Kunkka's unusual aura. Demonic domain. Kunkka was on the same level as him. Kunkka suddenly spread his arms, and a blizzard suddenly appeared. In the wind and snow, figures appeared one after another. More Kunkka clones appeared around him. It wasn't a few hundred like before, but 10 times, 100 times more. Kunkka's doppelgangers covered the entire mountain. Kunkka's real body floated in the air, facing Qin Zhao and the people from the supernatural organization. Do you really think that you can go against me? Human. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes at Kunkka. The blizzard was her demonic domain. The Belvov, Werewolf, Mansari, Limu, and Westana looked at Kunkka's clones. They finally understood why Kunkka was so terrifying. We're dead. Humans can't win at all. We're dead. Limu and Westana had the same thought. With so many clones, they could all die if they piled up. Mansari's expression was also very ugly. She even felt a bit regretful. If she hadn't rejected the supernatural organization's kindness before Kunkka broke the seal, things might not have turned out like this. But because of her stubbornness, Kunkka's seal had been broken in the end. From the moment Kunkka broke the seal, they were destined to lose. They had completely lost. The power that Kunkka had displayed wasn't something the humans could defeat. Here, I have boundless power. You can't beat me. Kunkka looked down at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao looked at Kunkka. Here, in other words, she hadn't truly reached the state of emptiness. She still needed the help of the Great Snow Mountain to be able to cast this doppelganger spell. For someone like Qin Zhao, he could run around with his little world. But Kunkka was much stronger than Kong Mosa. Kong Mosa had a demonic domain, but he didn't have his own spell. On the other hand, Kunkka hadn't completely reached the state of emptiness, but she already had her own spell. She'd reached this level with her own power, not Kong Mosa's opportunistic method. Qin Zhao secretly took out an angelic crystal. To Qin Zhao's disappointment, Kunkka didn't move at all. Wasn't she affected? She wasn't a demon? Kunkka didn't notice Qin Zhao's actions. Or rather, she didn't care about Qin Zhao's group at all. She didn't think that anyone here could defeat her. Kunkka ordered, "Kill! Leave no one alive." Countless clones charged toward the supernatural organization's front line like a flood. The supernatural organization members moved too. Kunkka's clones weren't strong, but there were too many of them, enough to make one's hair stand on end. Only Qin Zhao didn't move. He stood where he was, facing Kunkka. Gaia leaped up. She turned into a fire dragon and dove across the snow. She spat out dragon breath at the ground. Hiss! That's the legendary fire dragon, right? So powerful. We're saved. Only Mansari frowned. No one knew what she was thinking. Limu and Westana had hope, but Mansari was more experienced. Although this was also the first time he came into contact with such supernatural warfare. But he knew some basic knowledge about war. Gaia's fire dragon was strong, but she was like a cannon. If there were 100 cannons, she might be able to threaten the enemy. However, she was just an individual, and a cannon was too insignificant in the close combat battles of ancient times. Of course, the other members of the supernatural organization were also fighting, but they weren't as eye-catching as Gaia. Only Qin Zhao stood where he was. He crossed his arms and stared at Kunkka. Chapter 1320. They're more tenacious than you think. They won't be defeated so easily. What a joke. They'd all been in the Tower of Trials before. If they couldn't even last a few minutes, they might as well go back to their mother's wombs. Kunkka's clones weren't too strong. They weren't as strong as the monsters on the first level. Even Adus wouldn't retreat. Kunka's only advantage was numbers. Kunka frowned. She could feel that the clones were being destroyed in large numbers. But soon she felt relieved. So what if they were destroyed? She could have as many clones as she wanted. She was never afraid to compete with others in numbers. But these people were indeed difficult to deal with. Kunka had to admit this. Kunka had always been careful. She didn't want to make the same mistake she'd made 300 years ago. This mistake had sealed her for 300 years. Kunka looked at Chen Zhao. Was this guy really not worried at all? Or did he still have hope for the current situation? Just then, there was another change on the Belvo side. A group of werewolves appeared on the south side of the battlefield. Werewolf wizards. Kunka's eyes glinted fiercely. There was even some resentment in them. The new batch of werewolves were slightly smaller than ordinary werewolves, but they were all holding wooden staffs. Kunka suddenly raised his arms above his head. Then, a huge ice pillar appeared in the sky. This icicle was close to 50 meters in length. It was like a giant, sparkling, and translucent sword that could hold up the sky, pointing at the werewolf shamans. Mansari, Limu, and Vestana were all dumbfounded. Was Kunka a god? The huge ice pillar smashed toward the werewolf wizards. The werewolf wizards immediately waved their staffs and chanted a spell, releasing a shield together. However, a single blow shattered the shield. Some of the werewolf magi collapsed to the ground, while others were dispirited and listless. Kunka raised his arm. The ice pillar rose into the air and smashed down again. "They're dead," Mansari murmured. She'd thought that a new group had arrived, but they only managed to block Kunka's attack. Kunka coldly snorted. "Die." The dark lava under Chen Zhao's feet suddenly spread to the werewolf wizard's feet, instantly enveloping all of them. Puff! The ice crystals smashed into the dark magma, but it was like a wooden stick smashing into mud. Although the dark magma splashed everywhere, the force of the impact was greatly reduced. Everyone couldn't help but look at him. It turned out that he also had combat power. Previously, both the Belvos and Mansari's group had thought that Chen Zhao was here to watch the show. It was all because Chen Zhao hadn't done anything yet. But Chen Zhao's move was quite extraordinary. Kunka looked at Chen Zhao. Under her control, the ice crystal changed directions and flew toward Chen Zhao. The huge ice crystal was about to hit Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't dodge. Instead, he punched the ice crystal. Bang! Half of the ice crystal shattered. Chen Zhao kicked the remaining half of the crystal. The ice crystal flew back to Kunka, and half of Kunka's body was instantly sliced off. The ice crystal was still flying backward. The 100-ton ice crystal flew for hundreds of meters before landing in an arc. The Belvov, Werewolf, Mansari, Limu, and Vestana were all dumbfounded by the terrifying force. Kunka's body had been sliced in half, but she'd recovered once again. She didn't seem to be injured at all. This time, Kunka finally looked at Chen Zhao. Compared to the group of werewolf magi who had long since weakened, this person in front of him was the true enemy. Kunka finally didn't hold back anymore. A terrifying aura was completely released from her body. Kunka's body was surrounded by a white mist. Huge ice crystals appeared above Kunka's head, all pointing diagonally at Chen Zhao. In the eyes of the Belvos and Mansari, Kunka was like an inviolable god. She was high in the sky, looking down at the tiny enemy below. And that insignificant enemy was Chen Zhao. He couldn't win. Humans couldn't defeat gods, even if they all hoped that Chen Zhao could win. But they'd seen how terrifying Kunka was. Amidst the biting cold wind, these two people seemed to be about to engage in an unfair duel. Go! Kunka waved her arm and pointed at Chen Zhao. A dozen huge ice crystals shot at Chen Zhao. Each ice crystal weighed hundreds of tons. With the boost of speed, it was even more unstoppable. Chen Zhao moved too. He quickly threw a few punches. Some of the ice crystals were instantly shattered by Chen Zhao. Ice shards filled the sky. "President, do your best." Aduz was probably the most relaxed person here. No, he wasn't relaxed either. He was at the back, but he still had to fight against the blizzard. He was a bit regretful. It was so cold here, Los Angeles was indeed more comfortable. He'd come here just to experience parachuting. He couldn't interfere in the battle either. He could only cheer for Chen Zhao from the back. A patch of dark lava appeared behind Aduz. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to protect him from Chen Zhao and Kunka's battle. Chen Zhao still had some strength left. He also believed that Kunka hadn't gone all out either. "President, press that little bitch to the ground and ravage her." "Since when did Aduz become so bad?" "I learned it from the president." Klaus and the Lightning team worked well together. Fighting against Kunka's clones wasn't enough to make them feel pressured. Compared to the first level of the Tower of Trials with 5 people, Kunka's clones weren't difficult at all. At least before they reached their limits, they wouldn't feel pressured. Kunka pulled back his arms and pushed his palms forward, as if he was throwing something with both hands. Above their heads, a huge icicle appeared. This icicle was bigger than any of the previous ones. It was as big as a building. Chen Zhao raised his right arm. The moment the ice pillar fell, a beam of white light shot out. The ice pillar evaporated instantly. Kunka's chest heaved, but he quickly calmed down. "It's indeed a demon's domain," Chen Zhao mumbled. He'd used so much magic power, but he'd recovered so quickly. Everyone stared at Chen Zhao and Kunka nervously. The battle between the two was too shocking, but everyone could feel that the two of them were still holding back. The Belvov werewolves were even more incredulous because they knew better than anyone else how terrifying Kunka was. Chapter 13:21. Kunka grabbed at Chen Zhao through the air. Instantly, a terrifyingly low temperature engulfed Chen Zhao. It might only be a fraction of a second. Chen Zhao was sealed in a square block of ice. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Had the battle been decided just like that? The next moment, the ice cracked and Chen Zhao walked out unscathed. The dark lava suddenly shot toward Kunka and grabbed him tightly. The dark lava had wanted to corrode Kunka. Kunka wasn't like the normal opponents Chen Zhao had faced in the past. The dark lava couldn't corrode Kunka at all. Chen Zhao immediately changed tactics. He grabbed Kunka and smashed his head with a punch. Kunka's body also turned into ice water. The next moment, the ice water reformed in the distance and turned back into a human shape. As expected, an empty enemy wouldn't be defeated so easily, even if the opponent wasn't truly empty. As long as they were in the snowy mountain area, she was on the same level as Chen Zhao. Watching the battle, the others couldn't help but be in disbelief. The battle between the two completely exceeded their imagination. Both Kunka and Chen Zhao, Mansari found it even more unbelievable. If only he'd known the supernatural organization's power earlier. If only he'd known the supernatural organization's leader's power earlier, he definitely wouldn't have treated Wes like that. Now he needed to consider how they would get along in the future. Continue the deteriorating relationship with the supernatural organization? As a superior and subordinate, he could indeed target the supernatural organization, but this was definitely a very stupid action. Of course, the existence of the supernatural organization had its value. For example, now, if something similar happened in a certain area, he would have to take responsibility then. But how could he take responsibility? He could just send his subordinates or lower departments to deal with it. But only the supernatural organization could deal with this. Mansari looked at Chen Zhao's back and the members of the supernatural organization. Every member was so extraordinary. He really shouldn't have been so impulsive. Chen Zhao was a bit tired of this soft battle. "Are you done playing?" Chen Zhao asked. Kunka stared at him. "Do you want me to be serious? Do you think you can fight me?" I'll try. Qin Zhao shrugged. Kunkka narrowed her eyes at him. She could feel it too. With the intensity of the previous battle, he indeed wouldn't be able to defeat Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao turned his head and said to Aduz, Aduz, have our people retreat. What, you want to escape? Kunkka was a little surprised. I don't want to hurt my subordinates. Qin Zhao said honestly. It's not easy to train them. Aduz sent a signal to the supernatural organization. Everyone saw the signal and started to slowly but orderly retreat, leaving the battlefield. Gaia kicked a werewolf beside him away. Get lost. Don't get involved. The werewolf who was kicked glared at Gaia without saying a word. His strength was inferior to theirs, so whatever he said was useless. However, they clearly had no intention of retreating. They and Kunkka were mortal enemies, and they would not rest until one of them was dead. Gaia ignored the Belvos. She began to move closer to her companions, covering their retreat. West retreated to Mansari's side. He turned around and smiled mockingly. Colonel Mansari, do you need help? Mansari's face was cold and he didn't speak, but he knew that anything he said now would be embarrassing. Limu and Westana helped Mansari up. Gaia was at the front and was in charge of the retreat. Gaia turned into a fire dragon again and spewed out dragon breath. All the clones that got close were melted. How could Kunkka let Qin Zhao's people retreat so easily? He immediately controlled more clones to attack Gaia's group. Qin Zhao took out the 1,000 stone swords. When they appeared, everyone was stunned. They'd never seen Qin Zhao use this move before. Suddenly, the 1,000 stone swords flew up and shot toward Kunkka's clones. In an instant, Kunkka's clones fell down in droves. Everyone's expression froze. Wolf pups over there. If you don't want to die, get lost, Qin Zhao reminded. Qin Zhao hadn't mastered the 1,000 swords manipulation yet. This was also why he'd told his people to retreat. Once the 1,000 swords manipulation was activated, it wouldn't differentiate between friend and foe. The werewolves of the Belvov clan were also startled by the commotion. The scene of 1,000 stone swords flying in the air was truly spectacular. Of course, it was also frightening. Kunkka also attacked Qin Zhao. Countless icicles suddenly rose around Qin Zhao. These icicles obviously weren't a threat to Qin Zhao. Kunkka didn't expect to use them to defeat Qin Zhao. This was just the prelude to her real attack. The next moment, countless icicles exploded and pieces flew everywhere. The entire area was covered in ice dust. The 1,000 stone swords moved at this moment, shooting towards Kunkka. Kunkka immediately flew higher and avoided the attacks of the 1,000 stone swords. Qin Zhao dashed out of the range of the ice dust and jumped up to hug Kunkka. Icicles grew out of Kunkka's body like a porcupine. Qin Zhao had to let go. Kunkka pulled away and looked at Qin Zhao in the air. One had to admit that Qin Zhao was the toughest and most troublesome enemy Kunkka had ever met. Even the enemy who'd sealed her back then wasn't as troublesome as Qin Zhao. Back then, she hadn't been sealed because she'd been defeated. She'd only been ambushed. But this time, she was facing an enemy who could fight her head-on. After fighting for so long, Qin Zhao wasn't at a disadvantage. He didn't even show any signs of fatigue. At this moment, she had to admit that Qin Zhao was an enemy of the same level. Kunkka's eyes hardened, as if she'd made up her mind. Kunkka's clones started gathering toward her main body. Qin Zhao saw that Kunkka's actions looked like they were fusing. However, unlike Qin Zhao's 10,000 techniques returned to one, Kunkka was purely fusing her clones with her main body. Her clones were all made of ice and snow. After fusing, Kunkka's body grew larger and larger. Soon, Kunkka had become extremely huge. This was Kunkka's limit, even though there were still many clones that hadn't fused. If he continued to grow, Kunkka wouldn't be able to move. Everyone had been retreating from the center of the battlefield. Seeing Kunkka's huge body in the distance, they couldn't help but jump. So big, your leader can beat Kunkka? Our leader won't lose. Wes said calmly. Even though he was worried, he definitely wouldn't show it before Mansari. Chapter 13:22. Looking back from Munsaw's distance, one could vaguely see a small figure in the air confronting the giant. The giant was really too tall. It was clearly 3 or 4 times taller than the surrounding trees. The trees in the snowy region were at most a dozen meters tall. In that case, the giant was at least 60 meters tall. Chun Zhao, on the other hand, was much smaller, but when they clashed for the first time, Kunkka was at a disadvantage. Everyone saw the giant get knocked down. This made everyone feel as if they were watching an extremely realistic movie scene. After a few seconds, the impact came too. The impact brought up a wave of snow and rushed toward them. Thankfully, they were far enough from the center of the battlefield. The impact was strong, but it wasn't enough to cause harm to people at this distance. Even so, they were still shaken to the core. If they were half as far away, they would definitely die from the impact. Kunkka didn't expect that even though he'd turned into a giant, he would still be suppressed by Chun Zhao. Just how much power was hidden in this tiny body. Kunkka swept his foot out again. Chun Zhao didn't dodge. Instead, he kicked toward Kunkka's foot. Instantly, Kunkka's leg was broken. But soon, Kunkka's clones fused in again and repaired Kunkka's leg. An icicle appeared beside Kunkka. Kunkka grabbed the icicle and smashed it at Chun Zhao like a baseball bat. This time, Chun Zhao didn't take it head-on. Instead, he flew higher to avoid the icicle's radius. Then he turned and charged at Kunkka. Bang! Kunkka's huge body was crushed by Chun Zhao. Like a skyscraper collapsing, the impact swept in all directions again. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. Chun Zhao's power instantly increased, and he punched. Kunkka's huge body instantly cracked, and it completely collapsed. The impact of this punch was also unprecedented. It even caused an avalanche. The surrounding crust was slightly deformed. Even Kunkka felt danger now. She wasn't truly immortal. She could still die. Kunkka immediately broke free from his collapsing body and reformed. He couldn't let this human get close. He couldn't have any close contact with him. He had to distance himself. Kunkka's magic exploded. Dozens of icicles fell from the sky. But Chun Zhao was already charging at Kunkka. He wasn't going to play anymore. From the moment he activated 10,000 techniques returned to 1, he started to get serious. By now, both his speed and strength had reached their peak. Before Kunkka could dodge, Chun Zhao was already right in front of him. The fist landed on Kunkka's body, and Kunkka's body crumbled again. Chun Zhao saw that there was a core in Kunkka's broken body. The surrounding ice dust was rapidly gathering toward this core. Chun Zhao could end it immediately, but Chun Zhao didn't do that. After Kunkka reformed, he quickly pulled away from Chun Zhao. She felt a sense of danger, completely different from the feeling of being sealed 300 years ago. Although she had been sealed, the human witches and the Belvos could do nothing to her. But this time it was different. She felt death. Kunkka's eyes became serious. She felt that her weakness had been discovered. If it was an ordinary person who discovered her weakness, it wouldn't matter. Even if those people knew her weakness, they wouldn't be able to pose a threat to her. But Chun Zhao was different. This human had power that was above him. I'm done. Chun Zhao suddenly lost interest. Kunkka wasn't as strong as he thought. Seeing Chun Zhao suddenly turn around, Kunkka was confused. You want to escape? Chun Zhao stopped and turned to Kunkka. Are you sure you want me to kill you? If you can do it, why don't you kill me? There's a saying in China, Chun Zhao replied. Chun Zhao had considered many things. If it was like what he thought in the past, he would definitely eliminate all evil. But now, Chun Zhao had to consider more problems. Kunkka's expression wasn't so good. She had survived not because of her own power, but because Chun Zhao had let her live. Hide in the mountains. If I receive an order to kill you next time, you won't be so lucky. Everyone realized that the battle had calmed down. Even the snowstorm had stopped. Everyone was waiting anxiously. Finally, they saw Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao walked toward them unhurriedly. "President, is it over? Is Kanka dead?" Qin Zhao shook his head, looking tired. "No, I can't kill her. She escaped into the mountains." "Why didn't you kill her?" Mansari asked, dissatisfied. Qin Zhao looked up. "Who are you? What right do you have to yell at me?" "I represent the military," Mansari snorted coldly. "Soon, I'll also be your superior." Qin Zhao strolled forward and slapped him. "I don't care who you are. Anyway, you're just a bug in my eyes right now and in the future." Mansari covered his face. The burning sensation kept irritating him. What was even more intolerable was that this slap was given to him by his future subordinate. "I'm going to squash you like a bug." Qin Zhao looked down at Mansari. "You have to show enough respect to me and the supernatural organization. Otherwise, we won't clean up your useless superior's mess anymore." Mansari looked at Mansari. Qin Zhao's words stabbed deeply into Mansari's pride and self-esteem. Qin Zhao's attitude was no different from falling out with Mansari. Mansari couldn't do anything about it. Clashing with the supernatural organization head-on was clearly the most unwise choice. Qin Zhao left with his people. Everyone looked at Mansari with disdain and mockery. "President, is Kanka really not dead?" West asked. "No. I can defeat her, but I can't kill her." West didn't ask anymore. To be honest, he was happy with this result. As for whether Qin Zhao really couldn't kill Kanka or let her live, what was the difference between that and letting Kanka live on purpose? If Kanka was alive, Mansari couldn't leave the supernatural organization. West also suspected that Qin Zhao had let Kanka go on purpose. But West and Qin Zhao had a tacit understanding about this. Some people in the organization could guess what Qin Zhao and West were thinking. A few kids were naive and didn't know about these things. Chapter 13:23. The people of the supernatural organization immediately became alert and got into a fighting stance. But West waved his hand, gesturing for them to relax. He didn't think that the Belvos were here to find trouble. Finding trouble depended on who they were. They could face the military head-on because the military couldn't do anything to them. But if they went head-to-head with the supernatural organization, they would be massacred. This group of people were not good people. "Go and ask them what they want," Qin Zhao said to West. West walked up. "What's the matter?" "Sir, we want to talk to your president," a Belvos in human form said. He clearly didn't want the supernatural organization to misunderstand, because they knew very well how powerful the supernatural organization was. Plus, they didn't have any actual conflicts with the organization. "You can tell me directly," West said. "If it's a small matter, I can make the decision. If I can't make the decision, I'll pass it on to the president." West's answer was very cunning. His words were useless. The representative of the Belvos wanted to talk to Qin Zhao more, but now they didn't have the initiative. "We, the Belvos, have been living here for hundreds of years," the representative of the Belvos said straightforwardly. "We have never stirred up trouble. I hope we can return to our homeland, and we hope to receive the protection of the supernatural organization. We are powerless against Kanka." Most of the Belvos had transformed into humans and lived in a small town at the foot of Mount Toda. They relied on skiing tourists to make a living. If Kanka's followers hadn't caused trouble, they'd still be living like normal people. So, to be honest, they were actually the most innocent. Although West sympathized with them, he could not make the decision on this matter. Even the supernatural organization couldn't help. It depended on the military's attitude. "Wait a moment. I'll discuss it with the president." West turned back to Qin Zhao and told him the Belvos' request. "Should we care about them?" Qin Zhao asked. The Belvos didn't have any relationship with the supernatural organization. So, Qin Zhao considered the problem more from the perspective of benefits. The Belvos looked pitiful and homeless. But that wasn't the case. They wanted their own territory and a way to survive. If they wanted, they could leave and truly integrate into human society. There was no such thing as not being able to survive after leaving this place. However, staying here meant that they had to face two problems. One was the conflict between the military, and the other was their archenemy, Kunkka. West had a way to deal with the military. After all, it wasn't difficult for West to explain the situation. As for Kunkka, with the strength of the Belvos, it was impossible for them to compete with him. This was also the biggest problem they faced. They had hoped that Kunkka would be destroyed. But now that Kunkka wasn't dead, their hopes were dashed. They didn't care if Chen Zhao really couldn't kill Kunkka, or if Kunkka had escaped on purpose. It was meaningless to pursue this. They couldn't find out if Chen Zhao had done it on purpose either. What they needed now was protection, the protection of the supernatural organization. President, keeping them is good for us, West answered simply. Yes, Chen Zhao said. Do you have a way to get the military to stop the attacks? That old bastard Leon can do it. We helped him this time, so he has to return the favor, West said. It's just that Kunkka has some trouble. We'll stay here for a night, Chen Zhao said. I'll talk to Kunkka myself. I think she'll give in. President, the Totus Snow Mountains stretch for more than 600 kilometers and cover an area of nearly 50,000 square kilometers. Are you sure you can find Kunkka? In my eyes, she's much brighter than a third wheel. Hearing this, West didn't say anything else. Instead, he started talking to the Belvos. What was the point of working with the Belvos? It was to make them a time bomb. If the supernatural organization and the government fell out one day, the bomb would explode. Kunkka was a bandit. As long as the military or government couldn't destroy Kunkka, they had to consider the supernatural organization's attitude. In ancient times, why did so many generals support bandits and say that they were rebellious? Most of them had no choice. It was just to ensure that they wouldn't be killed. At the same time, it was to get food. As long as Kunkka existed, the Anti-Terrorism Security Department would have to keep providing funds. Of course, Chen Zhao had at least some professional ethics. At least he didn't create his own bandits. If Pamela led the evil spirit group and took over the mountain, the Anti-Terrorism Security Department would be dumbfounded. Although the supernatural organization didn't get involved in politics now, they were already close to the government. So, both Chen Zhao and West had to consider the future of the supernatural organization. The supernatural organization wasn't a private organization, so they would definitely have connections with the government. So, under the premise of keeping their moral bottom line, it was necessary to raise the supernatural organization's importance. Manchurikan could guess Chen Zhao's and the supernatural organization's intentions. But now his weakness was in Chen Zhao's hands. The Totus Snow Mountains incident had gone out of control because of his carelessness and arrogance. If he'd accepted the supernatural organization suggestion and let them take over, this wouldn't have happened. Kunkka wouldn't have broken the seal either. At night, Chen Zhao, West, and the representative of the Belvos entered the depths of the snow mountains. It didn't take much effort for the three to find Kunkka. Kunkka was hiding in the Great Snow Mountain, together with her followers. With a big radar like Chen Zhao here, it was meaningless for Kunkka to hide anywhere. Kunkka didn't expect to clash with Chen Zhao again so soon. Kunkka and her followers stood before the three, wary and confused. I can't even recognize you after you put on your clothes. Chen Zhao's words almost made Kunkka's nose go crooked. Her followers were even more furious. Kunkka was their faith. How could they tolerate Chen Zhao's insults? President, we're here to negotiate, West reminded in a low voice. We're not here to make enemies. Chapter 1324. Long time no see? Kunkka looked at Chen Zhao. Was this human crazy? They'd only been apart for less than 12 hours. More accurately, it had only been 10 hours and 51 minutes. Unlike Kunkka's followers, Kunkka was extremely calm now. No matter how much she hated Chen Zhao, She couldn't change the fact that she was only alive because Chen Zhao had spared her life. Chen Zhao definitely wasn't here to kill her now. If he wanted to, he would have done it long ago. Of course. Kunkka knew that she didn't have the initiative right now. Unless she wanted to die. Kunkka didn't want to die, so she could only suppress her anger and hatred. Tell me what you want. Kunkka ignored the representative of the Belvos standing beside Chen Zhao. West walked up. Ms. Kunkka, we want to sign an agreement with you. The supernatural organization and me? Us too. The representative of the Belvos said angrily. Kunkka had clearly seen through his background, but she'd purposely ignored him. This infuriated him. But what could he do? The Belvos were too weak. If it weren't for the supernatural organization, Kunkka would have killed him immediately. You, Belvos? Do you losers have the right to sign an agreement with me? Kunkka's attitude toward the Belvos was very rude, but it was understandable. After all, she'd been sealed by the Belvos for 300 years. It would be a joke if she had any good feelings toward the Belvos. Her hatred for the Belvos was much stronger than Chen Zhao's. What's there to be proud of? The representative retorted. You're just struggling at death's door now. Say that again? Do you believe I won't skin you alive? Okay, shut up, West scolded. West scolded. This time we are here for a discussion between the three of us, not to watch a quarrel. Discuss what? What's there to discuss? I have nothing to discuss with you. Kunkka snorted coldly. I think this discussion is beneficial to all three of us, so I'm hosting it. If you think there's nothing to discuss, then fine. Let's start an all-out war. West's attitude was even more unyielding. Just as the saying goes, the fist is the greatest reason. Chen Zhao and him weren't here to reason. They were here to set the rules. Kunkka's face darkened. What do you want to talk about? You and your followers, as well as the Belvov clan, the division of territory in the Toda Snow Mountain, and the rules. This used to be my territory. I have no intention of sharing it with others. You're talking about something that happened 300 years ago. If you still think like that, then you'll either die here or be banished from the Great Pagoda Snow Mountain. Kunkka stared at Chen Zhao and West angrily. How so? Kunkka finally relented. Kunkka was not stupid. Even if she was out of touch with the times for 300 years, it did not mean that she was a fool. Moreover, she had so many loyal followers. Her previous tough attitude was just to fight for more benefits for herself. West took out the map of the Great Snow Mountain range that he had prepared earlier. With this line as the division, this place will belong to you. The Belvov clan will return to their territory. This place will belong to them. No way. Why is their territory so much bigger than ours? The representative of the Bellwave clan immediately objected. Because we're stronger than you wolf cubs. Isn't that reason enough? Kunkka sneered. At this time, one of Kunkka's followers came to Kunkka's side and whispered something. I object to this division, Kunkka immediately said. Why can they get a tourist spot? You also want a tourist spot? West was surprised. I don't need it, but my followers do, Kunkka said. Kunkka was not alone. Of course. She had to consider her followers. After all, her followers had been trying hard to help her break the seal for 300 years. Kunkka was not the kind of person to be ungrateful. The so-called evil was just a matter of different interests. If Chen Zhao was sealed one day, he would probably be labeled as evil or something. You want to trick humans into your territory and then torture them to death, right? The representative sneered. You've done this many times. Maybe they've done it before, but it's no longer necessary, Kunkka said calmly. In short, I will never agree to this plan. Then we'll divide the tourist spot into a neutral area, West said. Both Kunkka's followers and Belvov werewolves can enter this area, but no fighting. Chen Zhao looked at the map and thought for a long time. Do you need to invest? Kunkka and the Belvov representative both looked at Chen Zhao. The supernatural organization can invest in hotels and supermarkets in this area. Chen Zhao did not know how to do business, but he knew the basic business rules. The Great Snow Mountain Range had many tourists every year, but it had almost no basic facilities. Most of the time, tourists would need to rent a house in the town. Previously, the residents here were mostly Belvov. Because they were xenophobic, the public facilities here were very simple. If Chen Zhao could invest in these hotels and supermarkets, he would not only get some jobs. He could accept both Kunka's followers and Belvovs to work here. The supernatural organization could also make some money. It might not be very high, but it would at least make some money. Right now, the supernatural organization still had a lot of cash in their accounts, but the cash would depreciate in their accounts. The supernatural organization did not have any profit points, so it might be a good thing for the organization to have a way to make money. I'm fine with it, Kunka said. She did not understand either, but she saw her followers secretly making eye contact. I'm fine with it too. The Belvovs couldn't wait for the supernatural organization to enter this area. Only in this way could their safety be guaranteed. Moreover, the Belvovs weren't rich. Because they rarely interacted with the outside world, many of them worked as lumberjacks or provided food and lodging for tourists to earn a meager income. Their first request was to return to their original land and avoid Kunka's revenge. Of course, they would be happy to see the supernatural organization enter this area. Also, my territory needs to expand and be connected to the neutral area. Chapter 1325. It had been 2 days since they'd returned to Los Angeles. Zhilin and Chen Zhao had shivered in the cold for 2 whole days. When Chen Zhao had gone to Mount Toda Snow Mountain, he'd left her with Feilai and wouldn't bring her along. Baby, it's delicious. Chen Zhao had to cook personally. Grilled octopus. Zhilin crossed her arms over her chest and turned to look at Chen Zhao. Leave the food. Zhilin still won't forgive me. I won't give you food if you don't forgive me. Zhilin swallowed. Fine, forgive me for now. You can be angry after you eat. How can there be such a good thing? Chen Zhao patted Zhilin's head angrily. Daddy, don't go. Zhilin was already hanging onto Chen Zhao's arm. Zhilin wants food, good food. You unprincipled little bastard. No more. Daddy's angry now. Daddy, Zhilin wants food. Daddy, Zhilin's wrong, wah. Okay, stop teasing Zhilin. Feilai picked up a grilled octopus. Honey, you can't have barbecue now. If you can't, you shouldn't have barbecued in front of me. Ignoring Chen Zhao's obstruction, Feilai started eating. Why are you all so stubborn? Chen Zhao's expression was helpless. Zhilin finally snatched the grilled octopus from Chen Zhao's hands. Running with her short legs to Feilai's chair, she climbed onto it. Ah, Daddy, look over there. There's something. Is that our new pet? Zhilin pointed at the forest beside Mirror Lake. Chen Zhao looked in the direction Zhilin was pointing. Crypt demons? There were 2 crypt demons and a Nissan species. Chen Zhao stood up and walked around the waterfall to the forest. The 2 crypt demons were both male and over 4 meters tall. Chen Zhao was confused. Why were they at his doorstep? Seeing Chen Zhao, the crypt demon swiped its claws at the Nissan species beside it. It stumbled and fell before Chen Zhao. It opened its mouth and was about to bite Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao lifted his foot and kicked the Nissan to the ground, stepping on it. What are you doing here? The crypt demon whimpered and pointed at the Nissan species. For me? Chen Zhao guessed. The crypt demon nodded and left. Chen Zhao glanced at the Nissan creature. He lowered his foot and stomped it to death. However, Chen Zhao had never tried the Nissan variety before. He didn't know how it tasted and if it suited his taste. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. Come and drag this thing back. You guys see how to cook it. Hearing Chen Zhao's shout, the 5 underlings immediately came over and dragged the Nissan back home. However, the Nissan species weighed close to 1,000 kilograms. The 5 inferior demons couldn't move it at all, so they could only ask the other inferior demons for help. There were a lot of inferior demons in the house, but only the first 10 were in charge. They were metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. A, B, C, D, and E. Every outstanding underling had to be an outstanding chef. That was the motto of the 10. How dare he call himself a chef if he doesn't know about nutrition? Not only that, but they also studied Chinese, French, Japanese, and English. To be able to learn so many languages, it definitely wasn't a brainless, low-level creature like Chen Zhao had initially thought. Not long after, the aroma of barbecued meat wafted over. Gold, what are you barbecuing? Mistress, it's a creature that Master brought back. We don't know what it is either. Don't you know that I can't eat barbecued meat? Fei Lai asked, displeased. Mistress, this meat is soft and juicy. It's also rich in protein, so it's perfect for barbecuing. Don't worry about not being able to eat it. If you roast it with lemon juice, not only will it taste better, it'll also help your digestion. It's good for both you and the unborn master. A while later, an underling came over with a plate. There were 2 pieces of barbecued meat on the plate. Jerlin wants it too. Jerlin wants it too. Jerlin kept swallowing. Gold, give it to Jerlin. Yes, master, please wait. The underling returned and also brought a plate for Jerlin. Delicious, delicious. Jerlin's face was covered in barbecue sauce. Beep, beep. Just then there was the sound of a car horn outside. Hearing this, the underlings all ran back to the basement. Chen Zhao also stood up to open the door. When he opened it, he saw Winnip and Four. Winnip, For, why are you here? Chen Zhao's expression was strange. If they came, then so be it. They didn't say anything. Smells so good. What are you eating? For walked past Chen Zhao and ran to the front yard. Aunt Four. Seeing Four, Jerlin grinned. Eat, eat, delicious. Four, why are you here? When Fei Lai saw Four, she was still lying lazily on the recliner. But when she saw Winnip come in, she immediately sat up from the recliner. Mom, why are you here? Can't I come to visit you? Grandma, you don't come to see Jerlin? Jerlin looked at Winnip, pretending to be wronged. Baby, how can I not come to see you, my little baby? Winnip hurriedly went up and picked up Jerlin. Grandma, eat, it's delicious. Good, oh good. Winnip's eyes brightened. Chin, what meat is this? Where does it come from? Do you have a stable supply? Don't tell me it's a rare supply. I'm sorry to tell you, Chin Zhao said helplessly. It's indeed a rare supply. Chin, give me your supplier's contact information. Winnip looked at Chen Zhao in disbelief. Mom, Fei Lai immediately said. They have their rules. Don't make it hard for Chin. Okay, Chen, Winnip said. Other than visiting Fei Lai, I'm also here to talk about your brewery. Have you produced any experimental products? Not yet. What do you think about the taste? Winnip was actually here to ask about Chen Zhao's beer. Winnip knew that Chen Zhao was a master brewer. Whether it was the Daydream, the Purple Brew, or the Nameless Wine, they were all the best in the market. Moreover, they weren't brands created by the market. They were truly famous for their taste and quality. It'll definitely taste better than the ones on the market. Chen Zhao said confidently. How's your brewery's production? At most 150,000 tons in the first year, Chen Zhao said. That's not enough. Increase production. Winnip panicked. 150,000 tons wasn't even enough for Mara Supermarket's beer sales for half a year. She was also very confident in Chen Zhao's beer, so she wasn't worried about the sales. Chapter 1326. Supermarkets were the main sales channel for beer, and Mara Supermarket was famous for its alcohol. Alcohol had always been Mara Supermarket's biggest selling product. This was because Mara Supermarket was publicly recognized as the best channel for alcohol. Customers were more willing to buy alcohol from Mara Supermarket. Last year, Mara Supermarket sold 1/3 of all beer in California. It seemed like 33% of the market, but in reality, Mara's supermarket only had less than 10% of the market. However, beer took up 33%, and that was just beer. Other alcohol sold even more. Some varieties and brands even took up 90% of the sales, especially some expensive ones. This was especially true for some expensive wines. Customers were more willing to trust Mara's supermarket, so the sales of expensive wines were particularly high. Some foreign tourists who came to California would go to Mara's supermarket to buy a few bottles of expensive alcohol to bring back. This led to the sharp heads of the manufacturers trying to get into Mara's supermarket shelves. On the other hand, Mara's supermarket's beer sales didn't have as much market share as other alcohol. There were many big brands, but other supermarkets had them too. They didn't have to go to Mara's supermarket to buy beer. However, Winnip hoped to increase the beer's market share through aging beer. For Mara's supermarket, customers were the biggest value. As long as the aged beer could be liked by customers and was exclusive, it could definitely increase the beer's market share. "There's nothing I can do," Qin Zhao said helplessly. "There's only so much production. I can't increase it." Qin Zhao couldn't increase production just because he wanted to. In order to increase the productivity of beer, more fermentation ponds and more production and assembly lines were needed. He needed to invest more money. Qin Zhao was rich, but it didn't mean that he would invest in an unfamiliar and unproven industry. Even if he had a bright future, he would still invest a small amount in the beginning. If he could open up the market this year, he would consider investing more money to increase production. "Qin, if you don't have money to expand production, I can lend you some." Winnip really didn't want to miss this opportunity. To her, as long as the quality of the aged beer was good enough, it would definitely be a great tool to expand Mara's supermarket. Currently, Mara's supermarket only had stores in California and a few large cities like New York and Washington. It couldn't cover other small and medium-sized cities at all. But if she had aged beer, it would definitely be a great tool to expand. Then she would take out a lot of loans, and the Marla's supermarket chain would cover the entire United States. Not to mention the annual output of 150,000 tons. Even if it was increased by 100 times, it would not be enough. 150,000 tons is not enough to supply the local Mara supermarket in California. Winnip, the beer hasn't been produced yet. It's too early to talk about this. Anyway, Qin Zhao had made up his mind. The first step was to be steady. Moreover, Qin Zhao would leave the production and management to Denver. Qin Zhao had the right to make suggestions, not to control Denver's operations. "Qin, you don't know how to do business at all. If you have the ability, you should seize the opportunity instead of slowly planning your strategy. In a year, your advantage will be gone. Once the other beer manufacturers analyze your beer recipe, they'll also change it. They can't change. The nameless wine has been on the market for a few months. Have you seen other manufacturers produce it?" Qin Zhao wasn't worried at all. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I want all your beer to be supplied to Mara's supermarket," Winnip said. "I can only say most of them. My friend's hotel needs my services too. I also have a restaurant that needs my services too. Qin Zhao's Marina restaurant would definitely supply it." "I don't care about your own business," Winnip said. "Your friend's hotel doesn't need much beer. The rest is all mine. But this way, the value of my beer will be limited," Qin Zhao said. If he only supplied it to one supermarket, the brand value would not be maximized. Even if Qin Zhao was not too ambitious, he at least wanted to increase the value of his brand. Mara Supermarket was a big supermarket in California, but outside of California, its coverage was much lower. How much more value do you want with 150,000 tons of beer? Winnip rolled her eyes. "I already said that I'm willing to invest in expanding production, but you don't want to. How about this? I'll give you the number of the person in charge of beer production and sales. You can talk to him. If he agrees, I can expand, but I can only double the production. As for next year's plan, we'll talk about it next year. Okay, I'll still say the same thing. If you need money to invest, you can find me. Right now, Mara's supermarket has quite a lot of cash. Mara's supermarket's operation was too good. Unlike in the past few years, she had been exhausted fighting for the market, let alone expanding her business. Several supermarket chains were not something that Mara's supermarket could compete with. Things were different now. Mara's supermarket had expanded its influence with its unique alcohol culture, so Winnip was very confident now. She did not expand blindly mainly because she did not want to dilute her shares too much. Moreover, the bank would not give Winnip a loan that was more than 10 times the market value of Mara's supermarket. Of course, Qin Zhao also did not want his brewery to be controlled by someone else. Even if it was Winnip, Qin Zhao still hoped to have it in his hands. Winnip was Fei Lai's mother, but she was talking to Qin Zhao as a businesswoman. Qin Zhao was willing to let Winnip put the beer on the shelves for the sake of family, but Mara's supermarket was definitely not his only choice. As for whether it would be listed in the future, it was still too far away for Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao did not even consider something so far away. Grandma, have some meat. Jerlin brought another piece of meat over. Winnip ate Nissan's barbecued meat. Qin, is there really no way to supply this meat on a large scale? Winnip knew very well how beneficial it would be to Mara's supermarket if it could be supplied on a large scale. Have you seen truffles sold in supermarkets? Qin Zhao asked. Yes, Mara's supermarket has them. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. It was said that truffles could not be grown artificially. That was a lie. However, it was true that cultivated truffles did not taste as good as wild truffles. This was undeniable. The truffles sold in supermarkets were less than $100 per kilogram. Compared to real truffles, they were many times worse. Chapter 13:27. Winnip's regret was written all over her face, but she could understand. Normally, expensive luxury goods wouldn't go into supermarkets. For example, bluefin tuna could only be ordered at auctions. Since Qin Zhao said so, no one else in America could eat this kind of meat. This meant that this meat was very rare. Not only did one need money, but they also needed connections. This kind of food, indeed, couldn't go into supermarkets. Winnip had come in a hurry and left in a hurry. Fei Lai tried to get her to stay, but Winnip still insisted on leaving. Even Jerlin's coquettish tactics didn't work. She was probably in a hurry to deal with work. Managing a supermarket chain, there were indeed too many things for her to deal with. For stayed and enjoyed her rare vacation. Auntie, look at little Jerlin swimming. Little Jerlin can swim very far now. For knew that Jerlin usually swam in front of her house, but she didn't expect Jerlin to be so good at swimming. She could even swim further than her. This didn't mean that Jerlin's stamina was better than For's. It was just that Jerlin was small, so she needed less strength. And more often than not, little Jerlin floated on the surface of the water, not swam. But Jerlin could swim more than 1,000 meters in the middle of Mirror Lake. She would rest for a while before swimming back. This was already shocking to For. After all, Jerlin wasn't even a year old. She was so healthy and strong that For couldn't believe it. Fei Lai, do you and Qin Zhao train Jerlin? No. Jerlin usually plays with Walter and the others or swims by herself. Qin Zhao and I don't really restrict her. Will she exercise too much? For asked worriedly. It's not good for bone development. But thinking about it, Qin Zhao was here. He was an expert in medicine and kinesiology. Since he wasn't worried, For's worries were unnecessary. Lots of exercise wasn't necessarily good. Even adult exercise had to be controlled. Some athletes even had amazing results on the field when they were young. But after retirement or old age, all kinds of diseases would attack them like fierce beasts. Children had to be even more careful. Of course, proper exercise can promote growth. But if they exercise too much, it would affect their growth and health. In fact, for children, running and jumping every day was the best exercise. Deliberately training children may not be good for them. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai wouldn't restrict Jerlin most of the time. Apart from her personality, he would deliberately guide her. In other aspects, it allowed her to let go of herself. Little Jerlin, on the other hand, had been accompanied by Princess and the others since she was young. In the near future, she would also have a little brother or sister, so she would not feel lonely. Chin, what were the results of Fei Lai's pregnancy test? Fei Lai and her baby are very healthy. Then do you plan to have Fei Lai have a natural delivery or a C-section? Chen Zhao thought about it. I respect Fei Lai's choice. In fact, painless childbirth in the United States was already very common. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai didn't really think about that. For stayed the night at Chen Zhao's house and went to work the next day. Chun Zhao rarely went out now if he had nothing to do. If the association needed something, it would usually be a phone call or West would come to talk to Chun Zhao in person. Do. A horn blared from the door. Chun Zhao was furious. He came out and kicked the car. Don't you know there are kids and pregnant women inside? Stephen got out of the car. Seeing the front of his car, he was also furious. Do you know how much I paid for this car? You asterisk Shoal, you have to compensate me. Stephen cursed as he entered the house. As soon as he entered, he smelled an alluring aroma. Ignoring Chun Zhao's obstruction, Stephen went into the kitchen directly. Seeing Chun Zhao stewing meat, he scooped a bowl of soup for himself. Fuck, this is for Fei Lai. Fei Lai can't drink this much. Stephen ignored Chun Zhao's anger. Delicious, what meat is this? It's so delicious. Why didn't you give me some? Stephen knew that Chen Zhao's house often had top-grade ingredients. Chen Zhao didn't give him any less, but he didn't know what kind of animal the meat was. Even soup was so fragrant. With a dark expression, Chen Zhao took a piece of meat from the fridge and threw it on the kitchen counter. Scram after you take it. It's best to barbecue it. If it's for pregnant women, you can make soup too. I'm here to invite you and Fei Lai to our movie's ending party. Is this your attitude? No, it's not convenient for Fei Lai. I have to accompany her. You don't have to go, but where's the gift? Chun Zhao searched his body and took out a lucky coin. Take it. You know how to use it. What are you giving it to me now? Give it to me after the movie is released. You can use it when you edit the movie, Chun Zhao said. Then take another one after it's released. We'll do both. Chun Zhao had invested 1/3 of Stephen's movie. Of course, he hoped that the movie would be a hit at the box office. Hearing that, Stephen put away the coin. He knew the effect of the coin very well. It was definitely the most magical thing in the world. How many coins do you have? Don't think about it. There's only one lucky coin left. I had 9, and I've used a few already. I should save as much as I can. Can't you make it? Make it? No one in the world can make lucky coins. Then these, they don't belong to this world. Chun Zhao stopped there. Okay, don't ask too much. I'm waiting for the movie to be a hit. Suddenly, Chun Zhao slapped his head. Oh, I invested in a beer factory. Can I put my beer brand in it? Huh. How come there's no news of you investing in a beer factory? I just thought of it a few months ago, Chun Zhao said. Okay, I'll go shoot a few scenes. Oh, what's your brand? Do you have a brand? Mountain Brand, Chun Zhao said. I'll have someone send the brand over. Chun Zhao picked up his phone and called Denver. Denver, send me the brand of our beer. I'll put our beer in my friend's movie. Mr. Chin, I don't think that's part of my plan. Right now, I don't have any money to invest in movies. If it's a niche movie, the effect won't be obvious. If it's a commercial movie with a large investment, the cost will be too high. It's not worth it. Is Stephen's new movie good enough? Free. Stephen, it's free, right? Chapter 1328. Steven? Which Steven? The most famous guy in Hollywood, Chen Zhao said. Mr. Chen, can you really insert our beer brand into Mr. Steven's new movie? No problem. Denver didn't expect Chen Zhao to have such a wide network. He'd heard that a 5-second advertisement in Steven's movie would cost at least tens of millions of dollars. Moreover, it depended on the size of the brand. Not everyone could spend money to do it. Every manufacturer that could do it in Steven's new movie was a first-tier brand. Actually, according to normal business rules, even though Chen Zhao was the investor of the movie, he still had to pay if he wanted to do an advertisement. However, this movie was completely Chen Zhao, Steven, and Rasva's playful work. Whether the movie would make a profit or not, they would decide it themselves. Chen Zhao would provide the cheating tools, Steven would be in charge of filming and editing, and Rasva would be in charge of distribution. The movie hadn't been released yet, but it was already in PLM's distribution list. Since the producer and producer of the movie didn't belong to the Big Six, PLM's commission was quite high as 15%. Even with Steven's name as a guarantee, PLM still asked for a high commission. This couldn't be helped. Hollywood had always been controlled by the Big Six. Even as PLM's chairman, Rasva didn't have the right to decide how much the film would be distributed. However, with PLM's powerful network, the movie could earn at least 4,500 screens in the first 3 days when it was released in North America. They were still negotiating the distribution with the cinemas. Chen Zhao and Steven didn't need to discuss this. PLM would naturally help them. After all, PLM was the distributor. These were all things they had to do. The investment for the movie was around $60 million. Including the publicity fees, the total investment would be around $100 million. If it was just the North American box office, it would have to be above $220 million to make a profit. Even though the box office was in the hundreds of millions, it was actually rare for an original movie to exceed $200 million in North America. It was even rarer than $100 million. Even Steven couldn't guarantee that the movie would make a lot of money. Even if Steven's previous Sea of Fury did shock Hollywood, no one could guarantee that Steven could create a second miracle. Of course, Hollywood movies didn't just rely on box office to make money. If they only relied on box office profits, 95% of Hollywood movies would lose money. If it was a superhero movie, most of them still had to rely on peripherals, such as figurines and props. However, Steven's new movie did not have any side effects. Therefore, other than the box office, the only way to make money was through the sale of various copyrights, related books, adaptation rights, and DVD sales. Denver didn't send the ticket to Chen Zhao. Instead, he came to Chen Zhao's house personally. When he saw Steven chasing after Jerlin, his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. "Hello, Mr. Steven." "Hello, you are?" Steven looked at Jerlin, who had already run far away, and stopped in his tracks, rather unwillingly. "I'm Denver, Mr. Chen's partner." Denver didn't think of herself as Chen Zhao's employee or subordinate. "Hello. I heard from Mr. Chen that you can help us market our beer brand in the movie. Is that true?" "Yes, I'm very close to Chen. We don't need to discuss such a small matter. Just give me the logo." Steven glanced at Chen Zhao in the front yard. "Come here and do me a favor." Steven suddenly lowered his voice. Denver froze for a moment, then followed behind Steven. Steven went to the kitchen and opened Chen Zhao's fridge. "Help me carry this piece of meat to my car." "Huh?" Denver was dumbfounded. Why did it feel like Steven was stealing? Fine, he'd listened to Steven for now. But this piece of meat was really heavy. After the two carried it to the car, Steven went in and carried some ingredients. "Tell Chen that I have something to do, so I won't be eating here." Steven was indeed a thief. Just as Steven was about to drive away, Chen Zhao discovered him. "Asshole, you stole from my fridge again." Without looking back, Steven drove away. Chen Zhao chased after him. "Asshole, give it back!" Steven stuck out his middle finger from the window. Chen Zhao chased for a few hundred meters, but in the end he could only watch Stephen's car drive away with hatred. Denver was dumbfounded, but he could tell that Chen Zhao and Stephen were very close. Seeing Chen Zhao return, Denver felt awkward too. After all, he was Stephen's accomplice in stealing. "Mr. Chen, I have something to do." Denver left awkwardly, but he really didn't understand. With Stephen's status, did he still need to steal from Chen Zhao's fridge? To him, it was just a friend's joke. Denver was more and more convinced that mountain beer would be a success. He also needed to get Mr. Product to produce some of it as soon as possible. If there was no product on the market after Stephen's new movie was released, it would be a huge loss for them. After receiving the gold coins, Stephen couldn't wait to start working. He felt that there were many ideas and concepts in his mind. He wanted to realize them all in the movie. To put it simply, it was like a fountain of ideas. Chen Zhao continued practicing Imperial Thousand Swords. In the battle against Kunkka, he used it for the first time. He wasn't familiar with it yet, but its power was starting to show. Kunkka's clone couldn't do anything before Imperial Thousand Swords. But Chen Zhao also felt that Imperial Thousand Swords was lacking. It was indeed effective if the enemies gathered together. But if the enemies didn't gather together, Imperial Thousand Swords would be useless. For example, if the enemies attacked from 4 directions at the same time, Imperial Thousand Swords could only send out 2 waves of swords. As for being able to control it as he pleased, it was still a long way off. Chen Zhao, pay attention to your breathing. Old Turtle sat on a rock and watched Chen Zhao practice Imperial Thousand Swords. Breathing? What does breathing have to do with Imperial Thousand Swords? Of course it's related. Every movement you control has to be in sync with your breathing. The rhythm of your skill is very important. Maintain a sense of rhythm. Chen Zhao tried a few times but couldn't find the rhythm. He kept trying, but he still failed. Why was the rhythm so hard to grasp? Chapter 13:29. Find the feeling, find the rhythm. After resting for half an hour, Chen Zhao went back to practicing. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt his heartbeat and breathing. This was the rhythm. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his arms. Instantly, the 1,000-stone sword split into 4. There was no chaos, no falling. So this was the feeling. Chen Zhao finally felt what he'd ignored before after Old Turtle's reminder. Actually, it wasn't hard for Chen Zhao to feel his heartbeat and breathing rate seriously. Chen Zhao definitely couldn't do something that even a normal person could do. However, both heartbeat and breathing were very ordinary things. So ordinary that normal people were used to these things and wouldn't notice at all. In a normal battle, Chen Zhao wouldn't pay attention to these things either. When Chen Zhao was controlling the 4 sword tides, the feeling disappeared again. For some reason, Chen Zhao suddenly felt tired and sleepy. It wasn't because he'd used too much magic power. Moreover, the drowsiness came too suddenly. Chen Zhao was very awake, but the drowsiness grew stronger. Chen Zhao tried his best to resist the drowsiness. Old Turtle looked a bit surprised. Old Turtle, why do I feel so sleepy? Come here and let me see. Old Turtle waved his hand. Chen Zhao went to Old Turtle. Old Turtle put his finger on Chen Zhao's pulse and looked even more surprised. Old Turtle, is there a problem with my cultivation? No, there's no problem. This is a sign of spiritual movement. What's spiritual movement? Shangqing state. Emptiness is also divided into 4 realms. Spiritual movement, embryonic breathing, sitting death, and spiritual silence. You're a sign of spiritual movement right now. What will happen to spiritual movement? What do I need to do? Nothing, but you'll feel more and more sleepy. Don't resist. If you want to sleep, sleep. You'll complete spiritual movement in your dreams. You'll be fine as long as you don't fall asleep during battle. How long will I sleep for? Not sure. You'll have spiritual movement symptoms a few times in the beginning. At most a few days, at least a few hours. You'll wake up after you've slept enough. When you reach the real spiritual movement state, you won't be able to resist. You'll sleep for 81 days. So you'd better move forward. Otherwise, you might not make it for your second child. Chen Zhao's expression changed. Fei Lai was almost 8 months pregnant. This meant that she'd give birth in less than 2 months. He'd already missed Zhilin's birth. He didn't want to miss the second one. After leaving the river map, Chen Zhao's heart sank. "Chin, what's wrong?" Fei Lai saw his worried expression. Fei Lai asked. "Zhao," Fei Lai said. "Chin." Fei Lai was immediately unhappy. Chen Zhao's face clearly showed that he had something on his mind. "Okay, I might fall asleep for no reason in the near future, and the longest I've slept for might be 81 days. I'm worried." Chen Zhao couldn't let it go. "You're worried that you won't see the birth of our child?" Chen Zhao nodded. "It's hard for me to explain. It's like hibernation. I'm not sure when it'll come." Fei Lai could understand Chen Zhao's feelings. No one would be happy. But even if Fei Lai wanted to help, she couldn't. She didn't know magic, and childbirth wasn't something she could control. I'm so tired. I'll sleep first." As he spoke, Chen Zhao's eyelids suddenly sank. He felt endless pajamas swarming over him. Chen Zhao remembered old Turtle's words. "Don't resist. Let nature take its course." "Sleep?" Chen Zhao opened his eyes abruptly. He looked around. He was sleeping on the sofa. How long had he slept? "Please don't be spiritual movement." Chen Zhao climbed up and saw Fei Lai in the front yard. She was still pregnant. It seemed that he hadn't overslept. Whoosh! Chen Zhao walked into the yard. "Darling." "Chin, you're awake." Seeing Chen Zhao wake up, Fei Lai was overjoyed. "Seriously, can you find a bed to sleep on next time? I told King Kong to move you to the bedroom, but he couldn't." Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. Even he didn't know what state he was in when he slept. King Kong could barely move you to the sofa. "Okay, sorry. How long did I sleep?" "Less than 2 days," Fei Lai said. "Luckily, you told me earlier. Otherwise, I would have thought that something was wrong with you," Fei Lai said. "Sorry to make you worry. You said you slept for 81 days. Do you just fall asleep like this?" "Yes." Chen Zhao nodded. "Are you done sleeping now?" "Yes, I don't feel sleepy, but I'm not sure when I'll sleep again." "What if you suddenly fall asleep when you're outside? Will it be dangerous?" "Darling, even if I fall asleep, I'll just be sent to the hospital." "That's not necessarily true," Fei Lai said. "Recently, there's a criminal gang that cuts kidneys in L.A. Chen Zhao furrowed his brows. "If you or Zhilin go out, you must have our pet with you." "Got it." "Yes, I know. West, I have something to tell you." "Oh, what is it?" "In the future, I might fall into a deep sleep. It won't be longer than 3 months, so after I fall asleep, I'll leave the association to you." "Understood, guild leader." "Guild leader, are you ill?" "No, it's because my power has reached a certain level. If you can reach my level in the future, you'll be the same." "I see." West was confused. Would this happen when one's power reached a certain level? Anyway, West had never heard of it, nor had he seen such records in magic books. However, with Chen Zhao's power, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he'd reached an unprecedented level. Therefore, it wasn't incomprehensible for this to happen. By the way, President Leon got promoted. Mansari took over as the head of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. "Oh, got it," Chen Zhao replied calmly. "Which department did Leon get promoted to?" "I don't know. I think it's a non-public department," West said. West said, "President Osalisa is also going to officially join the association. Leon didn't bring her with him when he was promoted." "Okay, I know. Is Osalisa in any trouble?" "There might be some." Chapter 1330. Are the two of you sure you don't want to go back to school? Mansari looked at Limu and Westana. The two girls had told him their thoughts after returning from the Toda Snow Mountain. They did not want to go back to school. They wanted to become Mansari's subordinates. Mansari thought about it. He was going to take up his post in the anti-terrorism security department. He was bringing his own team with him. However, there were not many people in his team. He could not control all the departments in the anti-terrorism security department. Limu and Westana had been through life and death with him. Therefore, Mansari had enough understanding and trust in them. If the two of them joined his team, they could help him with some of the work. Yes, Colonel Mansari, we want to stay by your side, Limu said. All right, I accept you too. For now, I hope you too will be my assistants and follow me to the anti-terrorism security department, Mansari said. What are we going to do now? Mansari thought about it and said, I will introduce you to my people tomorrow. After that, we will go to the anti-terrorism security department's headquarters. Every new official would definitely have their own small team, not to mention a department like the anti-terrorism security department. If they did not have their own team to take over, they would still keep their previous subordinates. When that time came, they would be a group of subordinates who only obeyed him on the surface but opposed him on the inside. Other than the two newcomers, Limu and Westana, Mansari still had 4 old subordinates. The next day, Limu and Westana met Mansari's subordinates. Let me introduce you to each other. Limu and Westana are my confidants. They will take over the anti-terrorism security department with you in the shortest time possible, Mansari said. Mansari introduced. Tony, Abevo, Tommy, Ingis, they are all my old subordinates. The 6 of them began to get to know each other. Mansari said, I know the 6 of you from different eras. I have gathered all of you together to show my trust in you. I hope you won't disappoint me. Also get ready. We are going to the anti-terrorism security department's headquarters now. Familiarize yourself with the place and communicate with your people. The 6 of them were excited. To be honest, they did not know what kind of department the anti-terrorism security department was. However, when they arrived at the headquarters of the anti-terrorism security department, they found that it was an office building with less than 10 floors. Moreover, the location was not a mysterious place. It was in the downtown area of Los Angeles, and it was quite prosperous. Colonel, are we going to work here from now on? This place looks more like a financial institution or a medium-sized company. All right, enough nonsense. Let's go in. After passing the security check, Mansari brought his people into the headquarters. After that, they went straight to the top floor. The entire top floor was filled with busy offices. This place was completely different from the military's command room. At this time, Asalaisa walked out and welcomed Mansari and the others. Hello, I'm Asalaisa, Mr. Leon's assistant, Asalaisa said. Hello, Miss Asalaisa. Do you plan to stay? Mansari asked with a smile. No, I've already handed in my resignation. I'll leave after the handover. Asalaisa gave Mansari a meaningful look. She didn't expect Mansari to be so direct. Even if she didn't plan to stay, she still felt uncomfortable when Mansari asked her this directly. It was as if she was expelled from this place. Mansari was very satisfied with Asalaisa's answer. Is that so? What a pity. I really need a capable subordinate like you. Asalaisa didn't feel the slightest sincerity from Mansari's words. Asalaisa brought Mansari and the others to the minister's office. Mr. Mansari, this is your office. Mansari went to the computer on the desk and began typing a password. Soon, a large amount of data and information appeared on the computer. Mr. Mansari, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. Wait, Mansari suddenly called out to Asalaisa. Is there anything else? Wait, Mansari's attention was on the computer. After a few minutes, Mansari finally raised his head. I found that you seem to have touched a few documents that you shouldn't have. Mansari's gaze suddenly became unfriendly. You've overstepped your duty. This is a task given to me by Mr. Leon. I didn't take the initiative to touch it. I'm just a liaison, Asalaisa said indifferently. I'm afraid your answer doesn't satisfy me. The secrets you've touched give me the right to execute you. Asalisa returned to her desk with a sweet smile and rested her arms on the table. Mr. Mansari, do you think that after losing Mr. Leon's protection, you can make an example out of me? I only know that you broke the rules. Mansari said coldly. At the same time, he took out his gun and pointed it at Asalisa's head. Do you have anything else to say? Mr. Mansari, do you really think that you can do whatever you want? The Mansari loaded the pistol. Are you testing my courage? Asalisa raised her right hand. There was a ring on it. Do you know what this ring represents? Mansari frowned. He had a vague impression of it, but he couldn't remember where. The supernatural organization. Limu suddenly shouted. Asalisa looked at Limu and praised him. Smart girl. Mansari's expression changed again. The supernatural organization. To him, it was a nightmare that couldn't be erased. You're an informant planted by the supernatural organization around Leon? You can say that. Asalisa didn't need to hide anymore. West had already given her an answer. She was allowed to return to the supernatural organization. She wasn't abandoned. The supernatural organization treated her as a part of it. Asalisa was glad that she didn't make the wrong choice. By the way, I also know about the tower-bearing Snow Mountain incident. Not only do I know everything. If you don't want to be fired the next day, you better behave. Huh. Asalisa looked at Mansari's expression as if his parents had died and laughed. What an interesting expression. Chapter 1331. Both Leon and the supernatural organization had hidden the truth about the Big Tower Snow Mountain incident. By hiding Mansari's negligence, the situation wouldn't have worsened. As long as Mansari didn't expel West, the supernatural organization would take over. But Mansari's pride and arrogance caused the situation to worsen. In the end, he even released Kunkka. In the key report, it only stated that there was a misunderstanding with the Belvos. Now, the misunderstanding had been resolved. The Belvos had also returned to their original habitat, but Mansari's role in this incident wasn't there, and the supernatural organization had this information in their hands. If it was just a difference in power, Mansari might have the determination to die together. But now, it wasn't just a difference in power. More importantly, the supernatural organization had something on him. It was fine if both sides were at peace, but if they had a dispute or even a conflict, then Mansari's wouldn't be so comfortable, especially since Kunkka had escaped and was still hiding in the Snow Mountain. Mansari had always suspected that Kunkka's escape was done on purpose by the supernatural organization. Now, whether it was intentional or not, it would become a sword of Damocles hanging over Mansari's head. To put it bluntly, the relationship between Mansari and the supernatural organization had been reversed. Mansari was angry, but he didn't dare to face the supernatural organization directly. At first, he had planned to use Asalisa to establish his dominance, but he didn't expect Asalisa to be from the supernatural organization. Seeing Asalisa leave, Tony asked in a low voice, "Boss, are we just going to let that arrogant woman leave?" "Forget it," Mansari said. "There's no point in fighting them now." Mansari didn't want to explain further. After all, the fewer people who knew, the better. Even though they were his confidants, he didn't want to share his weakness. Them? Who are they? Is it that so-called supernatural organization? I'll go kill them now. I said, this ends here. Don't talk about it any more, Mansari said with a frown. Other than Limu and West Anna, the other four didn't understand what was going on. Mansari waved his hand. You guys go to your assigned people and take control of the headquarters as soon as possible. Knock, knock. At this time, a man wearing glasses came to the door with a report in his hand. He looked like a clerk. Hello, Mr. Minister. I'm Chris Moore from the Incident and Coordination Department. Hello, Mr. Chris. How can I help you? I'm here to give you a copy of the current emergency reports. One of them is Grade A, Midnight Kidney Cutter. Because this matter has caused social panic, it needs to be dealt with urgently. At present, The police have increased the number of people on night duty and patrol work, but so far, there are no clues to be found. Yes, report this incident to me in detail. So far, there have been more than 30 victims. Before the victims were killed, they would disappear for 1 to 2 days. Then, when they reappeared, they would appear in various trash cans in the city. Most of them died because they were not rescued in time. There are only 4 survivors, 2 of whom are conscious. They are currently receiving treatment in the hospital. Midnight Kidney Cutter is the name given by one of the survivors. What about the statements of the 2 survivors? One of the 2 survivors didn't know much about the whole process. He only remembered that he was drunk in a bar after midnight and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was already in the hospital. Chris Moore said the other survivor was lucky. His process of being kidnapped was similar to the previous survivors. He remembered that he was drugged with wet wipes and woke up once during the kidnapping. He recalled that he was in a place similar to a slaughterhouse. He and the other victims were all hung up. A burly man dressed like a butcher used a butcher's knife to cut open their stomachs and took their kidneys. Did he see the murderer's face clearly? No. The environment was very dark at that time. He couldn't even tell the time. Did you find the murderer's hair, blood, or fingerprints? No. We can investigate the slaughterhouses in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. According to what you said, when the murderer committed the crime, there would be more than one kidnapper. There would be many kidnappers, so it's not difficult to investigate, Ingis said. In fact, the police have already investigated and did not find any slaughterhouses suspicious. In addition, according to the victims' statements and descriptions, the first crime scene doesn't look like a common mechanized slaughterhouse. It looks more like an old slaughterhouse. Many of the facilities are very old. The slaughter plan that the United States implemented now was to first rush the cattle, sheep, and pigs into an electric shock room, then electrocute them with high-voltage electricity before slaughtering them. The whole process was very clean and efficient. At least, the animals did not feel any pain when they were killed. This was also the merit of the Animal Protection Association. Any private slaughterhouse was illegal. Butchers nowadays didn't cut open animal stomachs. Instead, they controlled machines and skinned animals like an assembly line. In other words, the first crime scene is probably not a slaughterhouse. It's just that the murder made it look like a slaughterhouse. Could it be a criminal organization that sells organs? Logically speaking, the murderer could directly kill all the victims, but they didn't do so. This is different from the style of human organ traffickers. These human organ traffickers won't just cut off the victim's kidneys. They'll be greedier. From the eyeballs to the heart to the kidneys, they might even be their targets. So, for the time being, we can rule out human organ traffickers. If it's not for profit, then does it mean that the murderer finds pleasure in it? Or is he just a psychopath? Mansari thought for a moment. Which hospital are the 2 survivors in? St. Fu Lyman Hospital. They're currently under police protection. Go through the procedures. I want to see them in person, Mansari said. After all, this was not a small case. Since it had already caused social panic, the Anti-Terrorism Security Department was responsible for it. Chapter 1332. English, come with me to the hospital. English used to be a member of the military's Criminal Investigation Division. Usually, it was more difficult to solve a case in the military's Criminal Investigation Division than a regular criminal investigation. That was because their targets were soldiers, and the military knew much more than ordinary people. Most of the time, they would destroy a lot of evidence. The investigators couldn't collect any evidence. As the top investigator of the military's Criminal Investigation Division, English had solved many military crimes. That was why it was natural for Mansari to ask English to help. The 2 went to the hospital and met the survivor. "Hello, Mr. Corman," Mansari said. "We're the police. We have a few questions for you." The survivor, Corman, turned around and looked at Mansari and English with lifeless eyes. You've asked me many times. This time I've asked someone else. I've told you everything I know. Kerman's tone was impatient, and he seemed to be out of breath. It was understandable. After all, his kidney had been cut. Mr. Corman, we want to help you. Help me? Help me find my kidney? Or help me get a transplant? English said, Mr. Corman, it's not impossible to find your kidney, but you have to be willing to help us. You're our only clue. If you give up, I'm afraid there's no hope of catching the murderer and finding your kidney. Corman struggled to stand up. Both of his kidneys had been cut off. He had to rely on machines for excretion. If he couldn't find a transplant soon, he would probably die. If you have anything you want to ask away. Can you explain the circumstances of the crime scene again? The more detailed, the better, English said. Corman took a deep breath and started again. He had repeated this process many times. He had basically said everything he could remember. There was nothing new. Were you fully conscious at that time, or were you only half conscious? Ingus asked. Conscious, Corman said. Did you feel hot or cold? Hot, dry, Corman answered. The murderer drugged you. Did you feel a pungent smell? Corman froze. He frowned and tried to recall. After a while he nodded. Yes, it was pungent. Are the interior lights incandescent or fluorescent? Incandescent lamp, but the intensity should be very low. The light is dark yellow. Mansari went over to India and looked down at India's notes. However, he realized that India was not taking notes, but drawing pictures. Ingus showed Kerman the picture he had drawn. Is this how the crime scene looked like? Or is there something wrong? Kerman's expression changed drastically. His body trembled uncontrollably, and his eyes were filled with fear. Once again, Indies brought him back to that horrible slaughterhouse, Mr. Corman. Thank you for your cooperation. Mansari and Ingus walked out of the ward, and Mansari asked, How is it? Did you find any clues? When the murderer kidnapped the victim, he used Dofflerin, which can quickly knock people out and has a strong, pungent smell, English said. According to the victim's description, he felt hot and dry. The temperature in Los Angeles during the day is about 19 degrees Celsius and 11 degrees Celsius at night. During the day, there will be a certain degree of warmth, but he won't feel hot and dry. Heat usually occurs when the humidity is high. There has been no rainy weather in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas for the past 5 days, so people will feel hot and dry. There is only one possibility. The first crime scene was not on the ground, but in a cave, and it was at least 10 meters underground. Only this kind of environment would make people feel hot and dry. The murderer deliberately arranged the cave to look like a building, but because it was randomly arranged, it looked quite simple and crude. The dim yellow light was very bad for lighting, but it had a stronger impact on the blood. So, the murderer deliberately used a dim, yellow incandescent lamp. Even if someone woke up halfway, they would only notice the body on the chopping board, the blood stains, and the murderer, and ignore the surrounding environment. This is mainly because human senses have a focusing effect. People will only pay attention to the information that their subconscious mind thinks is important. Needless to say, Mansari was amazed by English's analysis. Mansari listened to Corman's answer, but he could not think of any clues. But English had actually analyzed so many clues. Mansari had worked with English in the past, so he knew how good English's deductive abilities were. The elevator door was about to close when a hand suddenly blocked it. Wait, Chan Zhao walked into the elevator. But when he looked up, he realized that Mansari was actually standing in the elevator. Mansari's expression also froze. His expression suddenly became unnatural. Chun Zhao was expressionless. He yawned and waited for the elevator to reach the first floor. He was here to treat a patient, but during the treatment, he did not seem to be in a good mood. The sleepiness came again, and he barely finished the treatment. Confused, English looked at Mansari. You know that person? English looked at the yawning person in front of him. It was obvious that they knew each other. India sensed it From the first moment they looked at each other, but they were definitely not friends. Mansari had been very nervous just now. It was like a mouse seeing a cat. In fact, Mansari did not even dare to breathe for 30 seconds in the elevator. He was really afraid of that man. Just then, the man's body suddenly tilted and he fell to the ground. Soon, a female nurse ran over to help him up. She seemed to be asking what was wrong with him. The man shook his head and wobbled away. Why would Mansari be afraid of such a weak person? Looking at Chun Zhao's back, Mansari was also slightly confused. Mansari ignored Indiz's question. Just as Chun Zhao was about to drive back, he received West's call. President Osalisa has officially returned. We're going to hold a welcoming party for her tomorrow night. Oh, okay. I'll remember. I'll go. Chun Zhao hung up and suddenly felt even more sleepy. No, he could not drive anymore. Chun Zhao forced himself to stay awake. He parked the car by the roadside and picked up the phone. Hey, Feilai, I feel sleepy again. Chun Zhao did not even finish the call. He yawned and lay down on the passenger seat. Chapter 1333. When the hooded man pressed the handkerchief on Chun Zhao's face, Chun Zhao didn't resist at all. Then the hooded man took out a jar. There was a colorful lizard in the jar. The lizard was only an inch long, but when it opened its mouth and rolled its tongue at Chun Zhao, his body actually started shrinking. Then he was sucked into the lizard's mouth. The hooded man put the lizard in the jar and left. He still had to find a second target. Hello, Mr. West, it's Feilai. Is Chen at the headquarters? No, Ms. Feilai. Didn't the president come home? No. He said he was sleepy on the way. I think he's asleep now. He didn't pick up my call. West thought about it. Chun Zhao had told him before that he would suddenly feel sleepy. He would suddenly feel sleepy, and he might really have fallen asleep on the road. Ms. Feilai, I'll send someone to find the president. Okay, thank you, Mr. West. Finding Chun Zhao's car wasn't difficult at all. In less than 3 hours, West found it through the traffic control files. Chun Zhao's car had been parked illegally on the side of the road for more than 4 hours. The traffic police had given him a ticket, but Chun Zhao was nowhere to be seen. West checked all the hospital records, but didn't find anything about Chun Zhao. Did something happen to the guild leader? Wester wondered inwardly. Thinking of this, West found it funny. Accident. Even if he was asleep, Chun Zhao was still a monster. Perhaps he was hiding somewhere to sleep. India, do you have any clues? Right now, L.A.'s public surveillance coverage is 55%, but there are no surveillance cameras at all the locations where the victims were kidnapped. This can only mean one thing. The culprit knows the location of the public surveillance cameras very well. Either the culprit is from the police or an electronic company. India suddenly paused. L.A.'s public surveillance facilities are all contracted to private companies. Boss, can you help me find the locations of all the victims? Mansari quickly found a map with each point marked out on it for Indith. Here. India studied the map for a long time. Boss, look at the locations. They're all concentrated in this area. What happened to this area? The surveillance equipment in Los Angeles started 12 years ago. A total of 3 companies won the contract. These 3 companies are responsible for this area, and this area respectively. Mansari immediately understood after hearing Ingis's words. This area is where the midnight kidney cutters commit their crimes. Which company is in charge of this area? Thomas Electron. Let's go to Thomas Electronics right now. We can't go now. We aren't sure who did it. If we go there rashly, we might be noticed by the murderer. We have to find out who has access to the blueprints of the area covered by the surveillance equipment. These blueprints are either the company's shareholders or the company's engineers. In short, the scope shouldn't be too big. Let's find out which of these people are suspicious, Ingis said. You're right. Mansari nodded, although it wasn't the first time India had discovered India's talent. However, One had to admit that Ingis was indeed very good at solving cases. He had no clue at all, but English was able to find so many clues. India and Mansari returned to the headquarters and sent people to investigate the higher-ups of Thomas Electron Company. As a counterterrorism department, the Anti-Terrorism Security Department not only had powerful armed forces, but also powerful intelligence gathering capabilities. After a tiring night, Mansari carried a large stack of documents and placed them on India's table. Ingis, through our intelligence gathering, we found that many people in Thomas Electron Company have access to the blueprints. Other than the shareholders, there are more than 30 engineers and normal employees who have access to the blueprints. Including the shareholders and higher-ups, there are more than 50 people. 50 people. That's not a lot, Ingis said. Then, Ingis began to look through the documents. I've already roughly looked through them. I didn't find anything wrong with them. Ingis ignored Mansari's words and continued to search through everyone's files. 3 hours later, Ingis separated 3 files and placed them to the side. Boss, I found 3 of them suspicious. I can't be completely sure yet. Ingis brought the files of the 3 people to Mansari. Mansari picked up the files. I've looked through the files of these 3 people. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Also, their bodies are very ordinary. They don't match the butcher's body described by the survivors. The information provided by the survivors might not be accurate or correct. Kerman wasn't conscious at the time. We can use it as a reference, but we can't use it as evidence, Ingis said. When investigating cases, there's a rule. There's a 50% chance that the witnesses provide false information. Why? Because they'll process the information themselves and then state it. They're not lying on purpose. For example, in the famous plane crash, the witnesses said that the plane exploded in the sky and then fell to the ground. However, after investigation, we found out that the plane actually exploded after it hit the ground. The witnesses got the sequence of the crash and explosion wrong. It's the same for Kerman. Most of the information he provided isn't very accurate. He said that he was conscious at the time, but in my opinion he said that he was conscious. Then what should we do next? Interact with these 3 people, Ingis said. I need to interact with them before I can determine if there's a problem with them. Mansari trusted Ingis's judgment. The 2 of them didn't rest and went straight to Thomas's company. They called the CEO of Thomas's company and asked him to call the 3 people that Ingis suspected to his office. Ingis, don't we need to separate them? Ingis shook his head and said, separate interrogation is usually used to prevent suspects from colluding to confess. The 3 of them aren't accomplices. If one of them answers wrongly, it'll be easy for the other 2 to correct it. This will help us determine the suspects. This also means that if there's a real murderer among the 3, it'll be difficult for the murderer to lie. Mansari learned another trick. He was really amazed by Ingis's criminal investigation ability. With Ingis under his command, it would be very helpful for his management of the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. At this time, the 3 people that Ingis suspected arrived in the office one after another.